So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with My Little Ponytail. So let's start the series. The wrong portal at the right time. The air in the forest of death tasted of decay and desperation, a familiar flavor to Uzumaki Naruto. It was a thick, humid soup that clung to the back of his throat, carrying the scent of wet earth, rotting leaves, and the sharp, coppery tang of blood from a recent, messy skirmish. He'd lost track of time beneath the dense, suffocating canopy, where the light bled through in fractured, green-tinged shafts. His orange jacket, a defiant blaze of color in the gloom, was torn at the shoulder and across the back, fabric snagged by a wind-style jutsu that had come too close for comfort. A shallow scratch on his cheekbone burned with a persistent sting, a reminder of the Suna ninja's well-thrown kunai. He was running now, not in blind panic, those days were fading, but with a low, focused intent. His sandals made soft, sucking sounds in the loamy mud, his breath a steady rhythm in his ears. The thrill of the chase, of the exam, was still there, a buzzing under his skin, but it was tempered by a gnawing, more immediate grievance. "Come on, you thieving bastard, show yourself!" he growled under his breath, his blue eyes scanning the tangled undergrowth and gnarled tree trunks. His voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence of the deep forest. He'd been separated from Sasuke and Sakura hours ago, a simple mistiming that had left him tracking a scroll-bearing team from stone on his own. He'd had them cornered near a ravine, his fingers itching to form a seal, when a blur of motion, too fast to be a genin, had shot from the canopy, snatched his travel pack from where it lay, and vanished. The stone ninja, seeing their distraction, had scattered. Naruto, with a roar of frustration, had given chase to the thief. His pack wasn't just supplies, it held his last, precious, perfectly wrapped rice ball. The loss was a personal tragedy. The trail had led him here, to a part of the forest that felt older. The trees were larger, their bark black and twisted. The usual chorus of insects and distant animal calls had faded, replaced by a heavy, waiting silence that pressed against his eardrums. The light dimmed further, as if the very air was thickening. And then, the mist appeared. It didn't creep, it coiled. It bloomed from the base of a colossal, ancient tree whose roots formed a gnarled cathedral of wood. This was no natural fog. It shimmered with a faint, internal luminescence, casting pastel reflections on the dark bark. It swirled in lazy, hypnotic patterns, and as it touched him, Naruto caught its scent. It was utterly alien. Cut through the forest's earthy perfume was a clean, sharp smell like the air after a lightning strike, layered with the cloying sweetness of candied apples and the dry, comforting aroma of old parchment and library dust. It was a scent that had no business existing in the forest of death. What the hell? Naruto skidded to a halt, mud spraying up to his calves. He wiped a hand across his face, the grit scratching his skin. There, in the heart of the massive tree's trunk, was a vortex. It wasn't a hole, but a swirling portal of light, its edges shimmering like a heat haze. Colors pulsed within its core, soft lavender, cheerful sky blue, bright sunshine yellow, all swirling together in a beautiful, terrifying dance. It hummed, a sound that vibrated in his teeth, a discordant harmony of distant, celestial choir bells and the angry crackle of static. Every ninja instinct in his body screamed trap. This was a S-rank Fuinjutsu, a psychological attack, something from Orochimaru's bag of tricks. His heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He formed the ram's seal with practiced ease, the familiar focus of chakra calming his nerves. "Kai!" he barked, the dispelling jutsu rippling out from him. Nothing. The vortex didn't even flicker. It continued to pulse, its hum now sounding almost inviting. The alien scent grew stronger, flooding his senses. Curiosity, that relentless engine that had powered 1,000 pranks and 100 near-death experiences, ignited in his chest. It warred with the instinctual fear. His stomach chose that moment to voice its own, more primal opinion. A loud, prolonged gurgle echoed in the silent clearing, a painful reminder of the stolen rice ball. His pack was gone. His team was elsewhere. This thing, it was the only lead. And it smelled like candy and lightning. He looked at the portal, then at the grim, dark forest around him. A slow, familiar grin spread across his face, pushing aside the fear. It was the grin he wore before jumping off a cliff, before facing down Zabuza, before doing anything monumentally stupid and brilliant. "This," he announced to the uncaring trees, "is probably a super stupid idea." He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the strange, sweet air. "All right then. Believe it!" And he launched himself, not with caution, but with a full-hearted, headlong sprint directly into the center of the shimmering light. The world dissolved. It was nothing like the body flicker technique, which was a blur of speed. This was a dissolution of self. He was not moving, he was being unmade and remade. He felt every color as a physical sensation. Lavender was a cool, soothing pressure against his skin. Sky blue was a buoyant, lifting joy. Sunshine yellow was a wave of pure, warm energy. The hum became a deafening symphony roar, vibrating through every bone. The scents intensified into a tsunami, explosions of rosewater and vanilla frosting, the crispness of mountain air, the damp petrichor of a summer storm, the tang of citrus. Time lost meaning. It could have been an instant, or a century. Then, with a sound like a giant, rubber balloon being popped right next to his ear, the universe spat him out. He landed not with a painful thud on mud or rock, but with a soft, yielding boing. The impact was absorbed by something springy and resilient. He lay on his back, utterly disoriented, the world a swirling canvas of wrongness. The first thing he registered was the sky. It was blue, but a blue so vivid and cheerful it looked painted by an overenthusiastic child. The clouds weren't wisps or blankets. They were perfect, puffy white marshmallows, cartoonish and stationary. The sun shone with a gentle, golden warmth that felt like a hug, not the harsh glare of the land of fire. He pushed himself up onto his elbows, his head spinning. The ground beneath him was grass, but grass of an impossible, uniform green. Each blade seemed perfectly formed, soft as down, and it sprang back instantly from his weight. He scooped a handful of earth. It was dark, rich loam that smelled overwhelmingly of fresh-baked bread and wildflowers. Where, in the actual? His own voice sounded thin and lost. He looked around. He was in a meadow of staggering beauty. Wildflowers and colors he didn't have names for dotted the landscape in artful clusters. Butterflies the size of his open hand drifted lazily on a breeze that carried the unmistakable, stomach-growling scent of cupcakes? Vanilla frosting with a hint of blueberry? In the near distance, nestled against rolling hills, was a town. It looked like a confectioner's fever dream. Buildings with thatched roofs were painted in bright candied hues, pink, mint green, lemon yellow. One structure, taller than the rest, appeared to be made of gingerbread and gumdrops. A stream, its water sparkling with an unnatural clarity, babbled cheerfully under a wooden bridge. And then he saw them. The inhabitants. His brain short-circuited. A small, butter-yellow creature with a long, flowing pink mane trotted past the far edge of the meadow, pulling a little red wooden cart filled with gleaming, perfect red apples. It was a pony. A tiny, delicate-looking pony. And it was talking. And I told her, the southeast field needs more direct sunshine for the golden delicious, but she just wouldn't listen. The yellow pony chirped in a high, sweet voice to a companion, a sky-blue pony with a rainbow-striped mane and tail that seemed to defy gravity. Now we'll have a batch that's just a tad too tart for the cider press. Relax, Shy. The blue one replied, her voice holding a brash confidence. A little tart never hurt any pony. Besides, I could use something with a kick after today's weather patrol. Boring as watching paint dry. They passed out of sight behind a large, friendly-looking boulder. Naruto's jaw hung slack. He blinked rapidly. He brought a hand up and pinched the skin of his forearm, hard. Ow. Okay, not a genjutsu. The pain was sharp and real. He felt a cold trickle of pure dread slide down his spine, pooling in his gut. Food poisoning? Did I eat a bad mushroom? Maybe that Tsunagai poisoned his kunai, some kind of hallucinogen. He scrambled on all fours, his ninja stealth instincts kicking in despite the panic, and ducked behind the large boulder. He pressed his back against its warm, sun-baked surface, his heart trying to beat its way out of his chest. He closed his eyes, trying to sense his surroundings as a shinobi would. The chakra, or what passed for it here, was overwhelming. It was everywhere, saturating the air, the soil, the very light. But it was nothing like the chakra of his world. His own energy, the fierce, swirling reservoir of the Nine Tails and his Uzumaki lineage, felt heavy and dense in comparison. This ambient energy was light, effervescent, sweet. It buzzed with a harmonic frequency that made his teeth ache. When he tried to draw it in, to mold it, it slipped through his mental grasp like trying to clutch water. It was repellent, rejecting his foreign signature. Okay, don't panic, he whispered to himself, his voice trembling. He was speaking to stave off the rising tide of hysteria. You've been in tough spots. You're a ninja of Konoha. First rule, reconnaissance. Gather intel. Right. Intel. He could do that. His signature move. He took a steadying breath and formed the sequence of hand signs with muscle memory precision: boar, dog, bird, monkey, ram. The flow of chakra from his core felt sluggish, resisted by the sugary atmosphere, but he pushed. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A small, pathetic puff of smoke, like a damp firecracker, erupted from his hands. It dissipated instantly. Not a single orange-clad copy of himself stood beside him. The world seemed to tilt. No. He tried again, his hands moving faster, desperation bleeding into the signs. Kagebunshin no jutsu. Another feeble puff. Nothing. The cold dread in his stomach turned to a block of ice. His breaths came in short, sharp gasps. He was stranded. In a world of pastel ponies and cupcake-scented air. Without the shadow clone jutsu. Without the Rasengan. Without any of the techniques that made him Uzumaki Naruto. He was a fish not just out of water, but in a desert of glitter. He was utterly, completely, and terrifyingly vulnerable. A deep, primal fear, one he hadn't felt since the academy days, clawed at his throat. He was nobody here. Just a weird, two-legged creature in a torn orange jacket. Just then, the gentle warmth of the sun on the boulder vanished. A chill swept over him, sharp and sudden, raising goosebumps on his arms. The cheerful sounds of the meadow, the distant chatter of ponies, the babbling brook, the lazy buzz of oversized bees, cut off as if someone had thrown a switch. An oppressive, swallowing silence fell. Naruto's ninja instinct screamed a final, definitive warning. He slowly turned his head. A shadow fell across him, but it was not the shadow of a cloud. It was a living darkness, pooling and coalescing on the perfectly green grass before him. It rose, taking shape, the rough, twisted silhouette of a pony, but one made of swirling, ink-black vapor and pinpricks of cold, star-like light. Its eyes were not eyes, but emerald green slits that burned with malevolent intelligence. A mane and tail of ethereal, smoke-like tendrils writhed around it. It didn't stand on the grass, it seemed to loathe the grass, the very air around it growing frostbitten and brittle. It was horror. It was hunger given form. It was everything this bright, sweet world was not. And it was staring directly at him. A low, guttural sound emanated from it, not a growl from a throat, but the vibration of a void. It was the sound of silence being torn, of something infinitely cold and empty wanting to be filled. This thing wasn't from here either. It had followed the scent of his chakra, the scent of the nine tails. The creature coiled, darkness gathering and thickening around its form like a storm cloud. The temperature plummeted further. Naruto saw his own breath puff out in a white mist. His fear, sharp and acrid, crystallized into something else, a defiant, familiar spark. He was unarmed. He was powerless. But he was not going to lie down and be consumed. He rose to his feet, his movements stiff with cold and adrenaline. He dropped into a basic academy taijutsu stance, hands coming up, palms open. He grasped for kunai that weren't there, for shuriken that didn't exist. He had no weapons. No jutsu. All he had was himself. With a soundless shriek that rattled his bones, the shadow pony lunged. It moved with terrifying speed, not a charge but a liquid surge of darkness. Naruto dove to the side, his body reacting before his mind could catch up. A tendril of condensed shadow, sharp as a blade, lashed out. It caught the trailing edge of his orange jacket. There was a sizzling hiss, and the fabric where it touched dissolved, even away as if by a powerful acid, the edges smoking with a foul, oily smell. He hit the ground, rolled, and came up facing the creature, his heart a drum solo in his chest. The hole in his jacket was a stark, terrifying reminder of the stakes. This wasn't a spar. This was for survival. The creature turned, its green-slitted eyes fixing on him with renewed interest. It seemed to savor his fear. Naruto's mind raced, discarding a dozen useless plans. No clones for distraction. No substitution. No ninja tools. He was back to basics. Back to the first lesson Iruka-sensei ever taught: never give up. A raw, furious energy boiled up from his gut, bypassing the strange resistance of this world. It was pure Uzumaki stubbornness, forged in 1,000 lonely nights and 100 battles. "All right, ugly," he spat, the words steaming in the frozen air. His voice shook, but it held. "You want to fight? You want something to eat?" He planted his feet in the soft, springy grass, feeling utterly ridiculous and deadly serious. "Come and get it! But I'm not going down easy!" He didn't wait for it to lunge again. Fear had transmuted into a reckless, blazing anger. With a yell that was half terror, half defiance, the same yell he'd used against Haku, against Gaara, against Pain, he charged. Not with a jutsu. Not with a trick. With a simple, straightforward, full-force punch, channeling every ounce of confusion, loneliness, and sheer will to survive into his fist. The adventure had begun. It was sweet, and it was horrifying, and it was nothing like he had ever believed. Chapter 2, Pinky Sense and Shinobi Nonsense. Naruto's fist, propelled by terror and fury, didn't connect with the chilling darkness of the creature. Instead, it passed through a plume of dissipating shadow as the entity slithered aside with an eerie, liquid grace. The force of his own punch sent him stumbling forward, the unnaturally springy grass doing nothing to steady him. He hit the ground, the breath knocked from his lungs in a pained oof. He rolled, expecting the cold bite of a shadowy tendril, but it didn't come. He scrambled to his knees, chest heaving, and saw the creature, hovering. Its star-dotted vaporous form seemed to ripple, the green slits of its eyes narrowed in what looked like calculation. It was studying him. The acid-like cold radiating from it made the grass beneath it wither and turn a brittle gray. It's toying with me, Naruto realized, the ice in his gut hardening. Like a cat with a mouse. The thought ignited a fresh, white-hot anger. He was nobody's mouse. What's the matter? He snarled, pushing himself back to his feet. His knees felt shaky. Scared of a fair fight? The creature responded by opening a maw Naruto hadn't seen before, a yawning black hole in its face. No sound came out, but the very air vibrated with a profound, soul-sucking silence that was worse than any scream. The colorful flowers near it wilted instantly, their bright petals curling into blackened ash. Naruto braced himself, his mind racing through every taijutsu kata he knew. He had no chakra for the 8 trigrams, no clones for diversion. It was just him, his body, and a world that felt like it was made of rubber and candy. Suddenly, a new sound pierced the oppressive quiet. A high-pitched, rhythmic squeaking, growing rapidly louder. Squeak, 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 squeak. Both Naruto and the shadow creature turned towards the noise. Barreling down the gentle hill from the direction of the town on a tiny, red scooter was a pink pony. Her mane was a cloud of darker pink curls, and her wide blue eyes were fixed on them with an expression of unbridled, gleeful urgency. A party horn was clenched in her teeth, and she was blowing it with all her might, producing the frantic squeaking. Incoming! She shouted around the horn, her voice muffled but thrilled. The sheer absurdity of the sight, a pink pony on a scooter charging a monster from the void, froze Naruto for a critical second. The shadow creature seemed equally perplexed, its predatory focus broken. The pink pony didn't slow down. At the last possible moment, she yanked the scooter's handlebars, executed a perfect, physics-defying 90-degree turn, and skidded to a halt between Naruto and the creature, spraying a shower of perfect green grass clippings. "Whoa there, Mr. Shadowy Meana Pants," she said, spitting the party horn into her hoof. She planted her other hoof on her hip, glaring up at the towering entity. "That is no way to greet a visitor. You're violating at least 12 different codes of Ponyville conduct, most importantly the no terrifying newcomers before they've had cupcakes clause, subsection B, paragraph welcome wagon protocols." Naruto stared, his brain utterly unable to process the words coming out of her mouth. The creature let out a low, confused rumble. It seemed to be trying to parse the sentence. The pink pony, meanwhile, turned her enormous, saucer-like eyes on Naruto. She looked him up and down, taking in his torn orange jacket, his spiky blonde hair, his two-legged stance. A gasp so profound it sucked in the surrounding frosty air escaped her. "Oh my gosh!" she exploded, bouncing straight up into the air with a spring that defied all known biology. She landed, her nose inches from his. "You're new! And you're all vertical! And you have fingers!" She grabbed one of his hands in both her front hooves, examining it with the intensity of a master artisan. "So many little wiggly bits! And you're all scratchy and torn! Did you have a fight with a bramble bush? Or a really mean cloud? I once had a fight with a cloud that rained orange soda, but that was actually pretty fun once I got a straw." The shadow creature, its patience evidently exhausted, decided the pink distraction was irrelevant. It lunged, not at the pony, but past her, a spear of condensed darkness shooting directly for Naruto's chest. Naruto's reflexes kicked in. He yanked his hand back from the pony's grip and tried to shove her aside. "Look out!" He needn't have bothered. The pink pony's hind leg shot out in a casual, backward kick. It connected with the base of a large, decorative garden gnome, who was smiling cheerfully with a painted-on grin that Naruto was certain hadn't been there a second ago. The gnome toppled over, landing on a perfectly flat rock, which triggered a coiled spring hidden beneath a tuft of grass. The spring launched a picnic basket into the air. The basket's lid flew open, and a perfectly timed gust of wind, from where Naruto couldn't see, caught the checked blanket inside, sending it billowing into the path of the shadow spear. The blanket didn't block the attack. It enveloped it. There was a muffled pop, and the blanket, now with a smoldering black hole in its center, fluttered harmlessly to the ground. The shadow spear was gone. The pink pony hadn't even looked. She was still staring at Naruto, her head tilted. "So I told the cloud, if you're going to be sour, go bother the lemon trees. But you're not from around here, are you? Your aura is all zoom whiz pop fizzle with a side of gurar. It's super duper interesting." The shadow creature recoiled, its form shimmering with agitation. This was wrong. This bright, chaotic creature was an anomaly. It gathered itself for a larger attack, darkness pooling around it like a stain spreading on water. Naruto, finally finding his voice, pointed a shaking finger past the pony. It's gonna." "Oh, don't mind him," the pink pony said, waving a hoof dismissively. He's just grumpy because no pony invited him to the last night moon celebration. My pinky sense was going all twitchy ankle itchy for a monster confrontation plus new friend combo, so I knew I had to come prepared. She whipped her head around, her curly mane somehow not moving as a single unit. And you, Mr. Gloomy Gus. Party crashers get the super duper ultra extreme. She reached into the seemingly bottomless depths of her own pink fluff and pulled out a cylindrical object wrapped in festive, striped paper with a big red bow. Welcome wagon! She pulled the ribbon with her teeth. What happened next wasn't an explosion. It was a celebration. The cylinder erupted with a sound like a symphony tuning up crossed with a jack-in-the-box. A confetti cannon's worth of glittering, multicolored streamers and heart-shaped confetti shot out, not just flying randomly, but arcing with impossible precision towards the shadow creature. Along with the confetti came a wave of sound, a peppy, upbeat polka tune played on what sounded like accordions and kazoos, and the overwhelming smell of fresh-baked cake, popping balloons, and joy. The effect on the creature was catastrophic. It shrieked, a real, tangible sound this time, a screech of sheer, existential agony. The cheerful colors seemed to burn it, the happy music to tear at its substance. The confetti stuck to its shadowy form, sizzling like snowflakes on a hot stove, each one popping with a tiny, cheerful ping. The creature thrashed, dissolving where the party debris touched it. With a final, gurgling wail of despair, it imploded into a tiny, black pinpoint that vanished with a soft pop, leaving behind only a faint smell of ozone and a single, slightly charred heart-shaped confetti that drifted slowly to the gray, dead grass. Silence returned to the meadow. The polka music cut off. The smell of cake faded, replaced once more by the generic sweetness of the air. Naruto stood, frozen, covered in glitter and pastel-colored streamers. He had one stuck in his hair, another draped over his shoulder like a military sash. He looked from the spot where a void monster had just been annihilated by a party favor, to the pink pony who was now carefully licking frosting off her hoof that had apparently also been in the cannon. There, she said, satisfied. All better. Now, where were we? She bounced closer. Oh, right. Introduction. I'm Pinkie Pie, Ponyville's premier party pony and welcome wagon. She thrust out a hoof. What's your name? And what are you? And how do you do that standing up thing without tipping over? It must be a super cool skill. Can you teach me? I bet it'd be great for tiered cake deliveries. Naruto's mind was a blank, white static. His ears were ringing. He slowly looked down at the proffered hoof. Mechanically, he reached out and shook it. Her fur was impossibly soft, like a plush toy, and warm. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, he heard himself say, his voice hollow. I'm a ninja. Pinkie Pie's eyes widened until they seemed to take up half her face. A ninja? She squealed, releasing his hand to bounce in frantic circles around him. Wowie! That's even cooler than a standing up thing. Do you do backflips? Do you have secret techniques? Do you have ninja stars? Do you know how to make a smoke bomb out of flour and a rubber chicken? I tried that once, but it just made a really sticky pancake all over the ceiling of Sugar Cube Corner, and Mrs. Cake was not amused, let me tell you. What was that? Naruto interrupted, his voice gaining a little strength. He pointed to the charred confetti. Pinkie stopped bouncing. Oh, that? That was a para spirit. Or a shadow pony. Or a gloom. Every pony calls them something different. They sometimes pop up in places where the magic gets thin or sad, like a draft under a door. She leaned in, whispering conspiratorially. They hate parties. Like really, really hate them. It's their kryptonite. Which is super handy for me, because I love parties. Her smile faltered for a microsecond, a flicker of something like concern in her bright eyes. But they don't usually just appear in the middle of a sunny meadow. And they never go after some pony, or someone, so directly. You must have really interesting magic to get its attention like that. Magic. They call it magic. The word felt wrong in his mind. It was chakra. It had to be. But it was a chakra that felt alien, tasted like sugar, and could be repelled by polka music. His knees finally gave out. The adrenaline crash hit him like a tidal wave. He sat down hard on the springy grass, the streamers rustling around him. The reality of his situation descended with the weight of a mountain, lost, powerless, in a world where monsters were defeated with party cannons and ponies talked. Pinkie Pie's manic energy softened instantly. She plopped down on her haunches in front of him, her head tilted. Hey! You okay, Mr. Ninja Naruto? You look like you just tried to swallow a lemon whole while running from a beehive. Which, let me tell you, is a bad idea. I speak from experience. Naruto let out a shaky breath that was almost a laugh. I'm not from here. I fell through a hole. In a tree. In my world. Pinkie's mouth formed a perfect O. A hole in a tree. That explains the Zoom Wiz aura. You're a dimensional traveler. Oh, this is so exciting. We haven't had one of those since that weird bug pony thing, and she was kind of rude. She sprang to her feet. You know what this calls for? Naruto looked up, wary. Party? Silly. Pinky giggled. Well, yes, later. But first. This is a job for. She struck a dramatic pose, pointing a hoof towards the town. The town library. Naruto blinked. A library? The best library. It's also my friend Twilight's house. She knows everything about everything, especially super complicated, weird, magical things, Pinky said, grabbing his hand again with surprising strength, and starting to pull him to his feet. If any pony can figure out your tree hole and your Gurrar magic and why a power spirit wanted to give you a not-so-friendly hug, it's Twilight Sparkle. Come on. Naruto allowed himself to be pulled up. He was too exhausted, too confused to resist. A library. Knowledge. That was a start. It was a concrete objective in a world that felt like a dream made a fondant. As Pinkie Pie led him, chattering nonstop about the virtues of library books, they make great hats in a pinch, apparently, and the precise cupcake flavors he simply had to try, Naruto cast one last look over his shoulder at the meadow. The dead, gray patch of grass where the creature had withered the life away stood in stark, terrible contrast to the surrounding vibrant green. The single piece of charred confetti was a monument to a battle fought with laughter and glitter. He shivered, and not from the cold. The horror had been real. The danger was real. This world might look soft, but it had teeth. And for the first time in his life, he didn't have his own fangs to bear in return. He turned and followed the bouncing pink pony towards the gingerbread town, his torn orange jacket the only familiar thing in a universe of pastel absurdity, the glitter in his hair catching the wrong-colored sun. Chapter 3: The Moonlit Theorem. Pinkie Pie's route to the library was less a walk and more a ricochet. She bounced ahead of Naruto, her movements so unpredictable, suddenly veering to sniff a particularly vivid flower, popping up on a fence post to wave at a passing bird, then zipping behind him to ask if his wiggly finger things could whistle, that he felt like he was escorting a hyperactive, pink comet. The town of Ponyville, seen up close, was even more disorienting. The buildings didn't just look like confections, some of them smelled like them. A bakery they passed exuded a warm, buttery scent so potent it made his empty stomach clench painfully. Ponies of all colors and sizes went about their business, pulling carts, carrying parcels in their mouths, chatting in clusters. Every single one of them stopped to stare as he passed. Whispers, like the rustling of leaves, followed him. What is it? Is it a minotaur? Too skinny. And only 2 legs. Look at his strange fur. It's like spikes. Is Pinkie Pie leading it? Naruto kept his head down, the back of his neck burning. He was used to stares, the Jinchuriki glares, the looks of fear or contempt, but these were different. These were stares of pure, unadulterated curiosity, with no malice, only bafflement. It was somehow more isolating. Don't mind them, Pinkie chirped, appearing at his elbow. They're just not used to non-pony-shaped visitors who aren't, trying to eat the town or turn it to stone. You're a novelty. Like a walking, talking pineapple. But less prickly. Mostly. They turned a corner, and Pinkie skidded to a halt in front of a large, ornate tree. Naruto stared. It was a library, but it was grown into the hollow of an enormous, thriving oak. Windows were carved into the trunk, a balcony wrapped around its middle, and a stout door sat at its base. A sign above the door featured a book and a candle. It was whimsical, organic, and utterly alien to the utilitarian stone of Konoha's archives. Here we are! The Golden Oaks Library, Pinkie announced, throwing the door open without knocking. Home of Twilight Sparkle, Ponyville's resident magical know-it-all, in a good way, and her #1 assistant, Spike the Dragon. Dragon? Naruto yelped, instinctively dropping into a defensive crouch, hands coming up. Images of the giant, destructive summon of Team Hiruzen flashed in his mind. A small, purple and green lizard-like creature, barely taller than Pinkie's knee, waddled into the foyer holding a feather duster. He had big green eyes and a crest of purple spines. He looked at Naruto, blinked, and then let out a yawn that revealed tiny, blunt teeth. Pinkie, what's the racket? Twilight's in the middle of a very delicate, whoa. Spike's eyes widened as he took in Naruto's full height, his stance, his human face. The feather duster dropped from his claws. What in Celestia's name is that? This is Naruto, Pinkie said, gesturing grandly. He's a ninja from a hole in a tree. And a power spirit tried to gobble him up in the meadow, so I had to use the welcome wagon, and now we need Twilight to figure him out before he gets into more trouble or tries to do a backflip and hurts himself. Spike's jaw worked soundlessly for a moment. He looked from Pinkie's earnest face to Naruto's wary, tense posture. Finally, he shrugged, a surprisingly human gesture. Okay. Weirder things have happened. Twilight! We've got a situation. A voice, sharp with focused irritation, floated down from an upper balcony lined with books. Spike, I said I wasn't to be disturbed. The harmonic resonance of phase-shifted moonlight through a prism of distilled dream sand is at a critical juncture. 1 decibel of extra noise could. The speaker, a lavender unicorn with a dark purple mane streaked with pink and violet, trotted into view on the balcony. She had an intelligent, expressive face, currently marred by a frown of deep concentration. Her horn was glowing a soft lilac, and she was levitating a complex apparatus of glass tubes and crystals. Her eyes, focused on her experiment, swept past them and then snapped back. The apparatus wobbled. A glass beaker slipped from her magical grasp. Naruto moved. It was pure instinct, the shinobi reflex to catch falling intel or dangerous equipment. He lunged forward, his body a blur compared to the pony's normal speed. He slid across the polished wooden floor, his hand snapping out and catching the beaker just before it shattered. He came to a stop on one knee, the glass vessel held steady, a few drops of shimmering silver liquid inside sloshing gently. Dead silence filled the library. Twilight Sparkle stared, her horn's glow flickering out. Pinkie Pie grinned. Spike's eyebrows were in his hairline. Naruto slowly stood up, feeling the weight of their stares. He offered the beaker back to Twilight. You dropped this. Twilight's horn glowed again, and the beaker floated gently from his hand back to her side. She didn't take her eyes off him. Her gaze was analytical, scanning him from head to toe with an intensity that reminded him uncomfortably of Shikamaru thinking 10 moves ahead. Fascinating, she breathed. Bipedal. Opposable thumbs. A skeletal structure clearly optimized for an upright, running posture, but with shoulder joints that suggest brachiation or climbing ancestry. The musculature is dense, lean, built for explosive power over endurance. The clothing is functional, armored at key points, but heavily damaged. Acidic residue on the left sleeve. Recent combat. Her eyes locked onto his. And you moved with a kinetic efficiency I've only seen in trained royal guards. Who are you? Naruto felt laid bare. In 3 sentences, she deduced more about him than most ninja did in 3 encounters. He straightened his back, meeting her gaze with his own stubborn blue. Uzumaki Naruto. Ninja of the Hidden Leaf Village. I fell here. Through a portal. I need to get back. A spatial translocation event? Twilight's eyes lit up with pure, scholarly fire. Any trace of irritation was gone, replaced by insatiable curiosity. She trotted down the stairs, her hooves tapping a rapid rhythm. Voluntary or involuntary? Was there a catalyst? Did you perceive the transdimensional medium? What did it feel like? It swirled. And hummed. And smelled weird, Naruto said, feeling utterly inadequate. Sensory cross-transference. Common in unstable apertures. Twilight zipped past him, her horn glowing as a dozen books flew from the shelves, arranging themselves in a floating constellation around her head. Pinkie said a para spirit attacked you. They're drawn to negative emotional energy and magical anomalies. Your arrival must have created a significant dissonance in the local harmonic field. A quill and parchment appeared, scribbling notes, midair. Show me your magic. Naruto blinked. My what? Your inherent magical signature. Every creature in Equestria has one. Unicorns channel it through their horns, Pegasi through their wings for flight and weather manipulation, earth ponies through their connection to the land. Yours is, it's like a dissonant chord. Loud, brassy, and covered in spikes. She gestured with a hoof. Perform a basic spell. A light cantrip. A simple levitation. Naruto's heart sank. He looked at his hands. I can't. Not here. My chakra doesn't work right. Twilight's quill stopped. Chakra? She tasted the foreign word. Is that your term for innate magical energy? Fascinating. A different paradigm entirely. Show me how you would use it in your world. The process. Feeling like a lab specimen, Naruto sighed. He formed the hand signs for the transformation jutsu, one of the first any academy student learned. He focused, reaching for the chakra in his gut. It was there, a warm, swirling pool, but as he tried to push it through his tenketsu, the sweet, harmonic magic in the air pushed back. It was like trying to swim upstream in molasses. He gritted his teeth, pouring more will into it. There was a puff of smoke, much larger than his failed clone attempts. It shrouded him completely. When it cleared, Twilight, Pinkie, and Spike gasped. Naruto looked down. He was no longer standing on 2 legs. He was on 4. He felt a strange, heavy weight at the base of his spine and an impossible sense of balance. He tried to step forward and stumbled, his new limbs moving in a discordant, uncoordinated shuffle. He looked over his shoulder. He had become a pony. A stocky, earth pony-styled creature. His fur was a muted, dusty orange. His mane and tail were his familiar spiky blonde, though rendered in hair. On his flank was a blank patch, no cutie mark. He was still wearing his torn, oversized orange jacket, which now looked absurdly large and hung off him like a tent. "Whoa," Spike said. "You're a pony!" Pinky exclaimed, delighted. "But a quiet pony! Your aura is all muffled, like a shout inside a pillow." Twilight was circling him, her quill a furious blur. "Fascinating! A polymorphic transformation, but one that alters your fundamental magical resonance. You've essentially wrapped your foreign chakra in a shell of equestrian form magic, damping its discordant signature. This is a survival adaptation, your body's way of trying to harmonize with the local mana field." Naruto tried to speak, but it came out as a choked whinny. Panic, cold and sharp, lanced through him. This wasn't a jutsu he could dispel. This felt structural, permanent. He tried to force the transformation to reverse, to reach for his own shape, but his chakra, now filtered through this pony body, felt sluggish and distant. He was trapped. Trapped in a small, soft, weak body. The horror was quiet, but profound. It was a loss of self more terrifying than any enemy. He was Uzumaki Naruto, not this quiet, orange pony. He stumbled again, his legs splaying out in 4 different directions, and he collapsed onto the library floor with a soft thud. He lay there, breathing heavily, the coarse fibers of the rug scratching his new cheek. The jacket's fabric smelled overwhelmingly of himself, sweat, forest, iron, a tiny pocket of his old world in this pastel prison. The scholarly excitement faded from Twilight's face, replaced by dawning comprehension and a hint of pity. She approached slowly, her voice softening. "You can't change back, can you?" Naruto shook his head, a clumsy motion with a pony's neck. A sound, pathetic and small, escaped him. "Oh dear," Twilight murmured. She glanced at Pinky, whose ever-present smile had finally faded into a look of genuine worry. "This is more serious than a simple translocation. Your very nature is incompatible with our world's base rules. Your magic, your chakra, is fighting against the harmony. This transformation, it's a stopgap. A buffer. But it's causing you immense distress." She levitated a large, ancient-looking tome from a high shelf. It landed with a thud beside Naruto. The cover was embossed with celestial patterns. "Spike, take a letter. To Princess Celestia. Subject, extra-dimensional refugee and magical anomaly. Include observations on polymorphic autoharmonization, power-spirit attraction, and a request for guidance on dimensional mechanics and emotional stabilization of the subject." As Spike scrambled for parchment, Twilight looked down at Naruto, her expression a mix of scientific awe and heartfelt concern. "We'll figure this out, Naruto. I promise. But first, we need to understand what you are. And more importantly, we need to make sure you still understand what you are." She gently used her magic to help him untangle his legs and stand. The sensation of telekinetic force, soft and insistent as a blanket, was deeply unsettling. He stood on trembling legs, a small, orange pony in a giant's jacket, in a tree full of books, in a world that had fundamentally broken him. The adventure was no longer just about getting home. It was about remembering how to be himself, when his very self had become a foreign concept. Chapter 4: The Scent of Apples and Shadows. The next few days in the Golden Oaks Library were a blur of quiet panic and methodical study. Naruto, stuck in his orange earth pony form, felt like a ghost haunting the stacks. His body moved with a clumsy, unfamiliar gait. The simple act of walking was a conscious effort. He'd forget he had 4 legs, try to stand on his hind ones to reach something, and topple over. The first time he tried to use the bathroom, the experience was so traumatizing he refused to elaborate, only emerging with his ears permanently flattened against his skull. Twilight Sparkle was a whirlwind of academic energy. She had charts, graphs, and floating models of interdimensional resonance theory scattered throughout the main room. She measured his ambient magical output with humming crystals, took samples of his hair, which, as pony fur, felt weirdly plush, and had him attempt to perform his chakra exercises under different lunar phases. The results were uniformly depressing. His chakra was locked down. He could feel the Nine Tails, a distant, grumbling presence at the back of his mind, but it was muted, as if listening through a thick wall. When he tried to mold chakra for even the simplest academy technique, the energy would sputter and die, repelled by the overwhelming, gentle harmony of Equestria. The only thing that seemed to resonate was his willpower, a blunt, stubborn force that didn't flow so much as slam against the barriers. Pinkie Pie visited daily, a burst of chaotic color against the library's muted wood tones. She'd bring experimental cupcakes, one with licorice and mustard frosting that made Naruto's new pony taste buds revolt, and tried to cheer him up with increasingly elaborate and physically improbable party games. Her presence was exhausting but warm, a constant reminder that not everything in this world was confusing science. Spike, the baby dragon, was the closest thing to normalcy. He was pragmatic, a little sarcastic, and unimpressed by Naruto's origins. He taught Naruto how to hold a quill in his mouth to write, a messy, frustrating process, and how to use his new, stronger neck muscles to carry things in a saddlebag. It was during one of these lessons, as Naruto struggled to knot a strap with his teeth, that Twilight looked up from a star chart. "The data is inconclusive," she announced, not for the first time. "But one thing is clear. Your chakra system is a closed loop. It doesn't interact with our ambient magic, it clashes with it. This transformation acts as an insulator, but it's also a cage. We need a different approach." She trotted over, her horn glowing as she adjusted a pair of spectacles on her snout. "Theory can only take us so far. We need field observation. How you interact with different types of equestrian magic in a non-laboratory setting." Naruto spat out the strap. "What does that mean?" "It means," Twilight said, a determined glint in her eye, "you're going to meet the rest of my friends. Each represents a different aspect of pony magic and society. Observing your reactions could be invaluable." Naruto's first instinct was to refuse. To hide in the library, where at least the confusion was scholarly and contained. The memory of the pony's stares on his first day here burned. But the memory of the power spirit, the cold, the hunger, the void, was sharper. He was weak here. Understanding this world wasn't a luxury, it was survival. "Fine," he grumbled, the sound a low rumble in his pony throat. "Who first?" "Applejack," Twilight said decisively. "The element of honesty. Her magic is tied to the land itself, growth, stability, hard work. It's the most fundamental, grounding force in Equestria. If anything can give us a stable baseline, it's Sweet Apple Acres." The walk to the farm was longer on 4 short legs. The landscape outside Ponyville was vast, rolling hills of impossible green, dotted with orchards and cozy-looking farmsteads. The air lost some of its generic sweetness, gaining the rich, honest sense of loam, hay, and ripe fruit. As they approached a huge, red barn and a farmhouse with a porch swing, Naruto felt a strange sense of calm settle over him. It was less cloying than Ponyville proper. It smelled like effort. "Applejack!" Twilight called out. From around the side of a large apple tree, a Stetson hat appeared first, followed by a sturdy, orange-earth pony with a blonde mane tied in a practical ponytail. She had 3 apples for a cutie mark and green eyes that held a direct, no-nonsense glint. She was hitched to a cart piled high with fresh-picked apples. "Howdy, Twilight!" she called, her voice warm and slightly drawling. "What brings you out?" Her eyes landed on Naruto, who was trying to look inconspicuous behind Twilight. Her friendly smile didn't falter, but her gaze sharpened, taking in his oversized jacket, his spiky mane, his lack of a cutie mark, and the palpable unease in his posture. "Well, who's your friend? He looks like he's been through a tornado and a hay baler backwards." "This is Naruto," Twilight said. "He's from very far away. He's having some trouble adjusting. I was hoping you could show him around the farm. The grounding atmosphere might be good for him." Applejack nodded slowly, unhitching herself from the cart. "Far away, huh? Reckon that explains the get-up. And the look in his eyes. Like a cornered fox." She walked right up to Naruto, not with Pinky's invasive curiosity or Twilight's analytical stare, but with a steady, assessing calm. She looked him right in the eye. "Well, Naruto, any friend of Twilight's is welcome here. Especially one who looks like he could use a solid day's work to clear his head. You ever bucked an apple tree before?" Naruto stared. "Bucked? Like this, sugar cube?" Applejack turned to a nearby tree, took a stance, and with a powerful, fluid twist of her hindquarters, kicked the trunk with both back legs. Thump! The tree shuddered, and a perfect cascade of red apples rained down into waiting baskets. The impact echoed, a solid, satisfying sound of pure physicality. Something primal in Naruto stirred. This wasn't magic. This wasn't confusing harmony. This was force. Applied, direct, and effective. A grin, his first genuine one since arriving, spread across his pony muzzle. "I can try." For the next hour, Naruto attempted to buck apple trees. His first attempts were pathetic, misjudging the distance, kicking with no coordinated power, once even slipping and landing flat on his back in the dirt, his jacket flapping around him. Applejack didn't laugh. She just nodded. "You're thinking too much. You're all in your head. Your body knows what to do. It's just a new shape. Stop fighting it and let it work." It was the opposite of ninja training, which was all about conscious control, about molding chakra with precise focus. This was about instinct, about trusting the body. Frustrated, Naruto stopped trying to calculate the kick. He thought of the power spirit, of his locked-away chakra, of the helplessness. He let the frustration fuel him. He turned, planted his hooves, and threw a wild, angry kick at the tree. Crack! It wasn't the clean thump of Applejack's buck. It was a sharper, more violent sound. A small, jagged fissure appeared in the bark. A pathetic 3 apples plopped out. But the tree had felt it. Naruto stood, panting, his hind leg throbbing. It was a small, tangible proof he could still affect this world. Applejack whistled. Well, I'll be a bit rough on the poor tree, but there's power there. Raw as an uncut diamond, but it's there. She tossed him an apple. Break time. They sat on the porch steps, the wood warm under them. Naruto crunched the apple. It was the most incredible thing he'd ever tasted, crisp, sweet tart, exploding with a flavor that was somehow more real than any food in his own world. It tasted like sunshine and hard work. So, Applejack said, not looking at him, gazing out over her orchards. Twilight says you're having trouble? Magic trouble. Something like that, Naruto muttered. I ain't much for fancy magic. My magic's in the soil, in the trees, in knowing when to plant and when to harvest. It's in being true. To the land, to your word, to yourself. She finally turned her green eyes on him. You're wearing a jacket that don't fit this body. You're walking like you're afraid of your own shadow. And there's a storm in your eyes. That ain't being true to what you are right now. Naruto was silent. The honesty was disarming, like a clean knife cut. Whatever you were where you came from, she said softly. You ain't that here. But you are something here. Until you figure out what that is, you're gonna be at war with yourself. And that's the kind of conflict that draws the wrong kind of attention. As if summoned by her words, the pleasant afternoon light seemed to dim at the far edge of the orchard. A creeping, grayish pallor spread through the rows of trees, moving against the wind. The cheerful sounds of birds and insects faded, replaced by that same oppressive silence Naruto remembered from the meadow. The scent of ripe apples and earth soured, undercut with the smell of damp rot and cold stone. Applejack was on her feet in an instant, her body tense. What in tarnation? From the encroaching grayness, figures emerged. They were like the Para spirit, but smaller, less formed. They looked like twisted, malformed piglets made of mud and gloom, with glowing green pinpricks for eyes. They moved in a scuttling herd, and wherever they trod, the lush grass withered to brown, and the apples on the low-hanging branches shriveled into black, desiccated husks. Blightlings! Applejack gasped, horror in her voice. But they haven't been seen since the Everfree last crept close years ago. Granny Smith's stories. The Blightling's glowing eyes fixed not on Applejack, but on Naruto. They chittered, a sound like grinding pebbles, and began to surge forward, a wave of decay. Twilight, get back to town! Get the others! Applejack barked, stepping forward, planting herself between the creatures and Naruto. I'll hold them! I'm not leaving! Twilight's horn lit up, a beam of lavender magic shooting out. It struck the lead Blightling, scattering it into clouds of dirt. But 2 more immediately coalesced from the gloom behind it. Naruto watched, the old fear rising. He was useless. A pony who couldn't even buck a tree right. He saw Applejack, solid as an oak, preparing to charge into a swarm that rotted life itself. He saw Twilight, the scholar, firing magic bolts with desperate precision. You're at war with yourself. The Blightlings were almost upon them. Their chilling aura made his new fur stand on end. He had no clones. No Rasengan. No ninja tools. But he had a body. A body that could kick a tree hard enough to crack it. He had the jacket on his back. And he had a brain trained for improvisation in the face of certain death. Applejack! He yelled, his pony voice rough. The cart! Tip it over! Without questioning, Applejack turned and, with a mighty heave of her shoulder, overturned the heavy wooden cart filled with apples. It crashed onto its side, creating a low barricade. Ripe apples spilled everywhere, rolling towards the advancing Blightlings. Twilight! Can you heat the air right above those apples? Fast and hot! Twilight, eyes wide, nodded. Her horn blazed, and a wave of shimmering heat rippled over the spilled fruit. The Blightlings scuttled over the apples. The sudden, intense heat caused the sugary, ripe fruit to rupture and steam. A thick, sticky, scorching hot apple sauce coated the lead creatures. They shrieked, their muddy forms sizzling and slowing, trapped in the goo. It was a distraction. A second. Now, buck the tree next to them. The big one! Naruto shouted, already moving. He didn't have Applejack's skill, but he had a target. He ran at a thick, old tree beside the writhing mass of Blightlings. He didn't think. He let the fear, the anger, the need to protect flow through him. He planted his hooves and kicked, not with technique, but with every ounce of his will. Crack THWOM. The old tree shuddered violently. A deluge of apples, branches, and leaves rained down, hammering the trapped, sticky creatures, burying them under a small mountain of organic debris. The gray pallor receded, the rotting stench fading. The few remaining blightlings at the edge of the orchard let out confused chitters and melted back into the shadows of the distant Everfree forest. Silence returned, broken only by the trio's heavy breathing and the sound of a few last apples thumping to the ground. Applejack stared at the applesauce and tree-limb battlefield, then at Naruto. Her look of shock melted into a slow, deep, approving smile. "Well, I'll be hog-tied and dipped in cider. You don't fight fair, do you, partner?" Twilight was scribbling notes in the air, her face alight. "Improvisational combat. Utilizing environmental factors. The application of non-magical problem-solving to a magical threat. This is groundbreaking." Naruto stood amid the mess, his leg aching, covered in dust and apple pulp. He wasn't a ninja here. He wasn't even a proper pony. But for the first time since he'd arrived, he didn't feel powerless. He'd used what he had. He'd protected someone. He met Applejack's honest gaze. "Fair fights are for suckers," he said, a ghost of his old grin returning. Applejack laughed, a hearty, real sound that echoed in the clearing. "I think I'm starting to like you, stranger. Now help me clean up this mess. A farm's no place for laziness." As he began nudging apples with his nose, Naruto felt a shift. The land's magic, Applejack's honesty, it didn't feel like a cage anymore. It felt like a foundation. And for a ninja who'd always built himself from nothing, a foundation was everything. Chapter 5: The Introvert and the Shadow Clone That Wasn't. The aftermath of the Blightling attack left Sweet Apple Acres smelling of victory, scorched applesauce, and hard work. As Naruto, Applejack, and Twilight cleared the mess, Naruto discovering the surprising utility of his mouth and neck for hauling branches, Twilight's mind was a whirlwind. "The correlation is undeniable," she muttered, levitating a sample of the blackened, withered grass into a glass jar. "Naruto's presence, or more specifically, the dissonant energy he carries, is acting as a catalyst. It's thinning the natural harmonic barriers between Equestria and other places. The Everfree Forest, being a zone of wild, uncontrolled magic, is particularly susceptible. The Blightlings were a minor incursion, but the Para Spirit was a more significant entity." Applejack spat out a piece of bark. "So you're saying he's like a crack in a dam let in the seepage?" "A distressingly accurate analogy," Twilight said, her ears flattening slightly. "Until we can repair the crack, that is, harmonize his chakra or find a way to send him back, these incidents may continue." Naruto felt a fresh weight settle on his shoulders. He wasn't just a refugee, he was a walking hazard. The determined set of Applejack's jaw told him she saw it not as his fault, but as a problem to be solved. "Well then, we'd best get to Solin. What's next on your friendship science list, Twilight?" "Observation and acclimation," Twilight said, her scholarly tone returning. "We need to understand how Naruto's unique energy interacts with different expressions of harmony. Applejack's connection to the land provided a stabilizing baseline. Next, I think a focus on empathy and gentle understanding could be beneficial. The opposite of a chaotic, predatory force." Naruto had a sinking feeling. "Who's that?" Twilight smiled. "Fluttershy." Fluttershy's cottage was a world apart from the robust farm or the studious library. Nestled at the very edge of the Everfree forest, it was a charming, slightly ramshackle structure that looked grown rather than built, with a thatched roof and tiny birdhouses everywhere. A gentle stream burbled nearby, and the air was filled with the soft sounds of chirping, buzzing, and the occasional contented sigh. The scent was a complex tapestry of wild flowers, clean animal fur, and fresh-cut hay. It was, to Naruto's heightened, and still confused, pony senses, overwhelmingly peaceful. It made the library seem noisy by comparison. "Now remember," Twilight whispered as they approached the yellow front door adorned with a butterfly knocker. "Fluttershy is very sensitive. She's the element of kindness. Speak softly, move slowly. Her magic is a gentle, persuasive force, a deep communion with living things." "Right. Gentle. Got it," Naruto mumbled, trying to soften his clumsy hoofsteps. He felt like a bull in a crystal shop, his very presence a potential disturbance. Twilight knocked gently. There was a long pause, then the softest of sounds from within. The door creaked open a sliver, revealing one enormous, cerulean eye peeking out from behind a curtain of long, pink mane. "Oh, hello, Twilight," a voice like a summer breeze whispered. "Hi, Fluttershy. I brought a guest. This is Naruto. He's new to Equestria and could use a little quiet companionship." The door opened wider. Fluttershy was a slender Pegasus, her coat a soft butter yellow, her mane and tail the color of cotton candy. She seemed to almost float rather than stand, her large wings folded delicately at her sides. Her gaze drifted from Twilight to Naruto. Her reaction was immediate and profound. She didn't gasp or stare. She flinched. A full-body shudder, as if a cold wind had blown through her. Her eyes widened further, not with curiosity, but with a deep, instinctual dread. She took a half-step back. "Oh my!" she breathed. Her eyes weren't on his orange coat or his jacket. They were fixed on a point just behind him, as if seeing something in his shadow. He's so loud." Naruto blinked. He hadn't said a word. "Not on the outside," Fluttershy whispered, answering his unspoken question. Her voice trembled. "On the inside. There's a roar. And a lot of loneliness. And a big, orange sadness." She looked at Twilight, genuine fear in her eyes. "Twilight, what is he?" Twilight looked from Fluttershy's terror to Naruto's confusion. "He's a friend, Fluttershy. But he comes from a very different place. His magic, his chakra is intense. I was hoping you could help him. Maybe your way with creatures." Fluttershy looked at Naruto again, her fear warring with her inherent kindness. She saw the poorly concealed distress in his own eyes, the way his borrowed body was tensed for rejection. Her own expression softened, though the wariness remained. Empathy won, but it was a fragile victory. I can try," she said, so quietly they had to lean in to hear. "Would you like to meet the chickens? They're very good listeners. And not easily startled." It was the most back-hoofed invitation Naruto had ever received, but he nodded. "Sure." The next hour was the most surreal experience of Naruto's life, which was saying something. Fluttershy introduced him to her animal friends with the solemnity of a diplomat at a royal summit. A white rabbit named Angel glared at him with unbridled contempt and thumped a warning against his shin. A family of mice scurried over his hooves, their tiny noses twitching before giving what seemed like disapproving squeaks and moving on. A bear simply sniffed him, let out a low, concerned rumble, and wandered back into the forest. Fluttershy interpreted it all in hushed tones. "Angel says you're very tense and it's upsetting the zucchini schedule. The mice think your energy tastes metallic. Harry the bear is worried you might attract other bears. The wrong kind." "The wrong kind of bear?" Naruto asked, baffled. "Shadow bears," Fluttershy whispered, looking towards the Everfree. "They're not very nice." Naruto was failing spectacularly. He, who had won over the Toad Sage Gamabunta with sheer stubbornness, was being judged and found wanting by chickens. The quiet of the place was getting to him, amplifying the roaring silence where his chakra should be, making him hyper-aware of the distant, grumbling presence of Kurama, the big, orange sadness Fluttershy had sensed. "I'm sorry," he finally said, sitting on a mossy stump, his head hanging. "I'm no good at this. I'm not gentle. I'm a ninja. I'm supposed to be loud and annoying and punch things until they understand." To his surprise, Fluttershy didn't retreat further. She fluttered over and settled on the grass nearby, her movements as silent as falling snow. The animals aren't scared of loud or annoying," she said, her voice gaining a sliver of strength. "The squirrel family in the East Oak is very loud. They're scared of emptiness. Of hunger that doesn't come from a stomach. They sense that in you. The roar? It sounds hungry." A chill that had nothing to do with the weather went down Naruto's spine. She was talking about the Nine Tails. She was sensing the fox's chakra, its millennia of hatred and isolation, even through the pony body insulation. "It's not me," he said, the words feeling inadequate. "It's something that's, with me. A prisoner. And I'm its prison." Fluttershy was silent for a long time, watching a ladybug crawl across a leaf. "That must be very lonely for both of you," she said finally. No one had ever phrased it like that before. Not Irika, not Jiraiya, not even himself. The sheer, breathtaking kindness of the statement, seeing the loneliness of the jailer and the jailed, struck him dumb. I guess it is," he admitted, the truth of it raw in his throat. Fluttershy looked at him then, and for the first time, her gaze held no fear, only a deep, fathomless pity. Maybe you don't need to learn to be quiet. Maybe you need to learn to listen. To the quiet inside. Even the roar is part of it. If you listen to it, maybe it won't have to scream so loud to be heard." It was the closest thing to sage advice he'd heard since arriving. It reminded him of the toads of the deep, ancient rhythms of nature. But here, it was offered not by a mighty sage, but by a Pegasus who was scared of her own shadow. "How?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Fluttershy offered a tiny, hesitant smile. "We could start with the birds. They understand complex songs. Maybe you could try to hum along? Not to overpower them. Just to find a harmony." It was a ridiculous exercise. Naruto Uzumaki, sitting at the edge of a magical forest, trying to hum in tune with a choir of bluebirds. He was terrible at it. His humming was off-key, too forceful. The birds would stop, cock their heads, and fly to a farther branch. But Fluttershy would gently correct him. "Softer, just a thread of sound, let it be a question, not a statement." Slowly, painfully, he tried. He stopped trying to do and started trying to be. To listen to the birds, to the wind, to the distant rustle of the Everfree. And beneath it all, to the low, constant growl in his soul. He didn't try to silence it. He just acknowledged it. Listened to its tune of isolation and rage. As he did, something shifted. Not in the world, but in his perception of it. The sweet, cloying harmony of Equestria didn't feel like an enemy force anymore. It felt like a song. A song he was hopelessly out of tune with, but a song nonetheless. And the fox growl was another, darker melody. The problem wasn't the songs, but their discord. He was so focused on this internal listening that he didn't notice the shadows around the cottage beginning to lengthen and twist independently of the sun. He didn't see the eyes, dozens of pinpricks of sickly green light, appear in the deepening gloom under the trees. But Fluttershy did. She went rigid, a small squeak of terror escaping her. The birds fell silent. The cheerful bugs stopped buzzing. From the forest edge, more blightlings emerged. But these were different. They had wings, tattered, moth-eaten things of shadow. They rose in a silent, chittering cloud, a swarm of decay aimed not at the land, but directly at the source of the dissonance they craved, Naruto. "Oh dear!" Fluttershy whispered, frozen in place, her element of kindness useless against mindless hunger. Naruto's ninja instinct screamed. He leapt to his hooves, putting himself between Fluttershy and the swarm. He had no plan, no weapons, no way to fight a flying horde. But he had just spent an hour learning to listen. He heard their chittering. It wasn't random. It was a rhythm. A harsh, discordant, hungry rhythm. And he had another rhythm inside him, a roar of fury and protection. He couldn't mold chakra for clones. But what if he didn't try to create something? What if he tried to reflect something? He thought of the multi-shadow clone jutsu not as a technique, but as an idea. I am everywhere. He didn't try to force chakra out. Instead, he took the raw, howling willpower he'd always used, the will to be seen, to be acknowledged, to protect, and he pushed it into the world's song. He didn't shout. He hummed. A single, powerful, low note that was pure Uzumaki stubbornness, tuned not to Equestria's harmony, but to his own defiant melody. The air around him shimmered. Not with chakra smoke, but with a warping of light, like heat haze. For a split second, 3 translucent, ghostly afterimages of himself flickered into existence around Fluttershy's cottage, one on the roof, one by the stream, one in the garden. They had no substance, no color, just outlines of light and vague intention. They were not clones. They were echoes. Echoes of his will, imprinted on the receptive, magical air. The flying blightlings swerved in confusion, their simple minds unable to process multiple targets that smelled of the same dissonance. They split their swarm, attacking the phantoms. Their attacks passed harmlessly through the light, but the distraction was enough. "Fluttershy!" Naruto yelled. "The bear! Call him!" Snapped from her paralysis, Fluttershy drew a deep breath. When she spoke, her voice was no longer a whisper. It was a clear, firm, resonant command that vibrated with the magic of her kinship. "Harry! Help!" From the woods, an enormous grizzly bear erupted, not with a roar of rage, but with a protective bellow. It swatted at the distracted blightlings like they were gnats, its massive paws scattering them. The shadowy creatures, finding no purchase on the solid, living bear and confused by the fading echoes of Naruto's will, retreated back into the forest gloom. The ghostly afterimages flickered and died. Naruto sagged, a profound exhaustion washing over him. He hadn't used chakra. He had used something else, his will, shaped by listening, imposed upon the world's magic. It was a whisper of a technique, a phantom of a jutsu. Fluttershy fluttered over to him, her fear gone, replaced by awe. You sang a very strong song," she said softly. "A protective song. Even the roar helped. It gave the song strength." Naruto looked at his hooves, then at the retreating shadows. He hadn't thrown a punch. He hadn't formed a Rasengan. He had hummed, and he had asked for help. And it had worked. The quiet Pegasus had taught the loud ninja a terrifying, powerful lesson. In this world, the strongest force wasn't always the one that broke things. Sometimes, it was the one that understood the tune. Chapter 6: Diamonds and Disguise. The exhaustion that followed the Echo Clone incident was different from chakra depletion. It was a mental and spiritual weariness, as if Naruto had strained a muscle he never knew he possessed. He slept for 14 hours in a spare room of the library, buried under a quilt that smelled of lavender and old paper, and dreamed not of foxes or forests, but of complex, interweaving melodies, some sweet, some thunderous, all clashing. When he awoke, the memory of the phantom clones lingered. It wasn't a jutsu. It was a trick. A brilliant, desperate parlor trick played on the fabric of reality itself. The thought was equal parts exhilarating and terrifying. Twilight was, predictably, ecstatic. Precognitive self-projection. Or perhaps a sympathetic harmonic resonance creating a temporary psionic matrix. She theorized, quills and scrolls orbiting her like anxious moons. You didn't channel magic, you imprinted on it. This could redefine our understanding of non-pony thaumaturgical interaction. Naruto, his head still foggy, just grunted into his morning hay and daisy sandwich, an acquired taste he was reluctantly acquiring. It just happened. I wasn't trying to do anything fancy. That's the fascinating part, Twilight insisted. It was instinctive. A survival adaptation integrating with local physics. Now, we need to test the parameters. Can you replicate it? Does it require an emotional catalyst? What's the range? The duration? Before she could strap him to more glowing crystals, a timely distraction arrived in the form of a scroll delivered by a smartly dressed royal Pegasus guard. Twilight unrolled it, her eyes scanning the elegant script. It's from Rarity, she announced, a hint of relief in her voice. She's heard about our mysterious visitor and is, quote, having vapors at the thought of such a unique sartorial challenge languishing in a library. She's invited you for a fitting. Naruto looked down at his tattered, filthy orange jacket, now even more stained with apple pulp and forest dirt. It hung off his pony frame like a discarded tent. It was his last tangible piece of home, but it was also a banner declaring his otherness. The thought of a fitting made his skin crawl. I don't need new clothes. These are fine. Twilight gave him a look that was pure, unadulterated logic. Naruto, your current attire is functionally unusable, hygienically questionable, and socially disruptive. Rarity is the element of generosity and Ponyville's premier fashion designer. She can provide you with garments suited to your new physiology and our society. Furthermore, she added, her tone shifting to her lecturing cadence, observing your interaction with a unicorn whose magic is channeled through artistry and aesthetic creation could provide invaluable data on the expressive, rather than utilitarian, application of harmony. Translated from Twilight speak, you smell, you look ridiculous, and it's for science. With a sigh that rustled his hay, Naruto capitulated. Carousel Boutique was a spectacle. It was a spinning, candy-striped building topped with a mannequin of a pony that slowly rotated. The windows displayed outfits of breathtaking intricacy and flamboyant color. It smelled overwhelmingly of perfume, new fabric, and ambition. The door swung open before they could knock, revealing a white unicorn with a perfectly coiffed, purple mane. Her eyes, a striking blue, widened at the sight of Naruto. But where Fluttershy's gaze had held fear, and Applejack's assessment, Rarity's was pure, unadulterated horror. Sweet Celestia's tiara! She gasped, a hoof flying to her chest. It's true! The poor, tragic creature! Walking about in that! She swooned dramatically against the doorframe. Twilight, darling, you should be ashamed, letting him wander the streets in a state of such fabricational delinquency. She recovered with a shudder, her horn glowing as she magically ushered Naruto inside. The boutique's interior was a chaotic symphony of color, texture, and light. Bolts of silk, satin, and tweed stood in rows like soldiers. Sequins glittered in trays. The air hummed with a subtle, creative magic. Now don't you fret a single, adorable little hair, Rarity said, her voice shifting to a soothing, professional purr as she circled him. Measuring tapes and pincushions floated around her in a telekinetic ballet. Rarity is here. We shall exorcise this calamity of cloth and unearth the stunning individual beneath. Naruto stood stiffly on a small podium, feeling more like a piece of lumber than a person. I like my jacket, he muttered, defensive. And sentiment is so precious, darling, Rarity said, not unkindly, as her magic gently began to tug at the torn garment. But we must honor the sentiment by preserving it, not subjecting it to further indignity. We shall have it cleaned, mended, and displayed in a place of honor. But for you, her magic deftly slipped the jacket off his shoulders. He felt strangely naked without its weight. We need something that speaks to who you are now. She began her work. It was not like any tailor Naruto had ever known. Rarity didn't just measure, she conferred. She would hold up a swatch of deep crimson velvet against his orange coat, and reject it. Too warlike. He has conflict enough within. A sharp, checkered pattern was dismissed with a shake of her head. Too chaotic. His energy needs framing, not exacerbation. She asked him questions as she worked, her magic snipping and stitching with impossible speed. What brings you joy, darling? Ramen, Naruto said automatically, then flushed. It's a food. From home. A culinary passion. Excellent. Textures, warmth, comfort. A spool of smooth, warm golden linen floated into view. What is your greatest strength? Naruto thought of Raisingans, of clones, of endless endurance. All gone. He thought of the Blightlings, of the Phantom Echo. I never give up. tenacity, resilience. A bolt of durable, navy blue canvas, subtly woven with reinforcing threads, joined the golden linen. And what do you wish for? Deep in your heart? The question surprised him. He was quiet for a long moment. The easy answer was to go home. But beneath that, what did Uzumaki Naruto, stripped of his title, his power, his very shape, truly want? The answer came, unbidden and embarrassingly simple. To be acknowledged. For people to see me. Not what's inside me, or what I can do. Just me. Rarity's scissors paused in midair. She looked at him, her dramatic demeanor softening into something genuine and perceptive. My dear, she said quietly, that is the most universal wish of all. Her horn glowed brighter. The fabrics merged under her magical touch. She wasn't just sewing, she was composing. The navy canvas formed a sleek, close-fitting vest, functional and strong, with clever hidden pockets she insisted were for mysterious ninja things. The golden linen became a loose, comfortable shirt worn underneath. She created durable, yet flexible leggings that allowed for his new range of motion. The colors were muted compared to her usual fair, earth tones that complemented his orange coat, with subtle orange piping that echoed his lost jacket. But the masterpiece was the cloak. It was made of a material that seemed to shift in the light, sometimes a deep forest green, sometimes a stormy gray. It was light as air, yet surprisingly warm. For discretion, Rarity said, fastening it with a simple, dark clasp. And for drama. Every pony needs a little drama. When she was finished, she levitated a full-length mirror before him. Naruto stared. The pony in the reflection was unfamiliar, yet cohesive. The clothes fit his form perfectly, moving with him. He looked less like a lost child playing dress-up and more like someone. A traveler. A stranger, yes, but one with purpose. The cloak added a silhouette of mystery he hadn't realized he'd missed. He looked competent. He looked like he belonged in a story, not stranded from one. It's not orange, he said finally. Orange is a statement, darling, Rarity replied, a satisfied smile on her face. You were wearing a shout. Now you are having a conversation. The orange of your coat is the accent. The rest is the sentence. She adjusted the cloak's drape with a final, magical tweak. There. Now you are not hiding. You are presenting. The transformation was more than fabric deep. Standing there, in clothes that fit this body, that acknowledged its shape and needs, Naruto felt a shift. The war between his inner self and his outer form didn't cease, but it entered a tense ceasefire. This was the uniform for his current mission, survival and understanding. His moment of quiet appreciation was shattered by the boutique's front window exploding inward. Not with a crash, but with a silent, chilling shatter. The glass didn't fall, it dissolved into shimmering dust that hung in the air, freezing mid-fall. From the street outside, a figure stepped through the hole. It was a pony, but wrong. Its coat was the color of a deep bruise, its mane and tail flowing streams of liquid darkness. Its eyes were solid, polished obsidian, reflecting the room in terrifying miniature. It moved with a predatory, silent grace, and the air around it grew deathly still and cold. This was no mindless blightling. This was intelligence. This was purpose. Its obsidian eyes swept the room and locked onto Naruto. The dissonant heart. It spoke, its voice the sound of grinding glaciers, echoing from no discernible mouth. The anchor. You will come. The quiet one desires the song of your chaos. Rarity shrieked, diving behind her cutting table. Twilight's horn flared, a shield of lavender magic springing up between them and the creature. Naruto's mind, honed in battle, analyzed in a flash. No clones. No direct attack. The creature was made of refined shadow, magic given sentience and hunger. It had called him an anchor. A focal point. Rarity's words echoed, you were wearing a shout. Now you are having a conversation. He couldn't shout it down. But maybe he could confuse the conversation. Twilight! Light! He barked. Twilight, understanding instantly, shifted her magic. Her shield dissolved, and from her horn erupted a brilliant, blinding strobe of pure white light, flashing rapidly. The shadow creature recoiled, hissing, its form wavering. Rarity! The mirrors! The sequins! Everything shiny! Rarity, trembling behind her table, peeked out. She saw the creature, saw Naruto standing firm in the new clothes she had made for him. Fear melted into a fierce, protective pride. Her horn blazed with a light of its own, not harsh like Twilight's, but a dazzling, prismatic radiance. Oh, you dreadful, dreadful thing! She cried, her voice losing its genteel edge. You ruin my window, you threaten my guests, and you have the audacity to do it during a fitting? Unforgivable! Her telekinesis exploded into action. Not attacking the creature directly, but attacking the environment. Every bolt of iridescent silk, every tray of glittering sequins, every beaded necklace, every crystal ornament in the boutique was ripped from its place and flung into the air. They didn't hit the shadow pony. They swirled around it, caught in a tornado of Rarity's magical fury and Twilight's strobing light. The boutique became a cacophony of refracted brilliance. 1,000 points of light danced on every surface, flashing, spinning, creating a dizzying, impossible to focus on maze of glare and color. The shadow creature, a being of pure darkness, was utterly lost in it. It thrashed, trying to find a stable shadow to cling to, but Rarity's whirlwind of finery left none. Its form began to diffuse, scattering like smoke in a hurricane. "Your song is noise," it grated out, its voice fading. "A screaming jewel." With a final, silent implosion, it collapsed into a puddle of inert, gray mist that quickly evaporated. The whirlwind of fabric and finery settled gently to the floor, as if placed by careful hands. The strobing light ceased. Silence returned, heavy and ringing. Rarity staggered out, her mane slightly disheveled, breathing heavily. She looked at the glittering wreckage of her shop, then at Naruto, still standing defiantly on the podium in his new outfit, and scathed. A slow, triumphant smile spread across her face. "Well," she said, flipping her mane back with a hoof, "I do believe that confirms it. The ensemble is battle-ready. And may I say, darling, you wear it with panache." Naruto looked down at the clothes that had just been forged in a storm of shadow and sequins. They weren't armor. They weren't a disguise. They were a declaration. Uzumaki Naruto was here. And he was just getting started. Chapter 7: Speed, Skepticism, and a Sonic Sneeze. The atmosphere in the library that evening was tense, a stark contrast to its usual scholarly calm. The scent of ozone from Twilight's defensive magic still lingered, mixed with the finer perfume from the glitter storm that clung stubbornly to Naruto's new cloak. He sat on a cushion, the fine fabric of Rarity's clothes feeling strange against his fur, a good strange, a purposeful strange. Twilight paced, her hoof steps a rapid, anxious staccato on the wooden floor. "This changes everything. A sentient entity. It spoke. The Quiet One. It called you an anchor. This isn't random seepage from the Everfree. This is a targeted incursion. It wanted to take me," Naruto said, his voice flat. The memory of the obsidian eyes, the grinding voice, sent a cold ripple through him. He wasn't just attracting monsters, he was being hunted by them. "Which means you're not just a crack in the dam." Applejack, who had been summoned post-haste, mused from the doorway, her Stetson tilted low over her eyes. "You're the prize behind the door the crack opened." Fluttershy, hovering nervously near the bookshelf, let out a tiny squeak. The Quiet One? That sounds very not good." "It sounds like a boss level." Spike chimed in from the kitchen, where he was making hot cocoa. He'd taken the whole sentient shadow monster attack with the dragon's pragmatic calm. "We need more data," Twilight declared, skidding to a halt. "We need to understand the scope of this. If these entities are drawn to Naruto's specific energy signature, we need to know how far that signature extends. We need a perimeter survey. Fast." "And who's the fastest thing in Ponyville?" Applejack asked, a knowing glint in her eye. Naruto's ears perked up. "The blue one. With the rainbow hair." "Rainbow Dash," Twilight confirmed. "The element of loyalty. Pegasus. Holder of the sonic rain boom. If any pony can do a wide area aerial reconnaissance and report back on any unusual shadow activity or energy fluctuations, it's her. And if any pony's gonna test what you're made of, it's her too," Applejack added with a wry grin. "She don't trust nothin' she can outfly or outfight. Fair warning. Naruto felt a flicker of the old competitive fire. Speed was something he understood. The body flicker technique, Shunshin, was a staple of high-level shinobi. He'd never been the fastest, that was Minato's legacy, and Sasuke's obsession, but he was no slouch. In this body, grounded and heavy, he felt like he was moving through syrup. The idea of meeting a living embodiment of speed was intimidating, but also compelling. They found Rainbow Dash not on the ground, but in the sky above a wide, grassy field on the outskirts of Ponyville. She was a cyan blur against the too blue sky, carving complex loops and spirals in the air, leaving faint, rainbow-colored contrails in her wake. The sound was a constant, low thunder rumble of displaced air. "Rainbow!" Twilight shouted, cupping her hooves around her mouth. The blur stopped mid-helix. For a second, Rainbow Dash hung in the air, wings beating a steady, powerful rhythm that kicked up dust devils below. Then she dove. It wasn't a graceful descent, it was a controlled meteor strike. She pulled up at the last second, landing in a three-point stance that sent a small shockwave through the grass, making Naruto's new cloak flap. "Twilight! Applejack! Fluttershy!" she said, her raspy voice buzzing with energy. Her rose-red eyes immediately snapped to Naruto. And you must be the weirdo. She didn't say it with malice, but with the blunt curiosity of a predator inspecting a new species in its territory. She trotted a slow circle around him, her gaze analytical. So, you're the two-legged thing that's causing all the ruckus. Huh. You look less freakish than I heard. Nice cloak. Thanks, Naruto said, meeting her gaze. Her confidence was a physical force, like standing near a humming generator. Rainbow, we need your help. Twilight began, launching into an explanation about harmonic signatures, dimensional anchors, and sentient shadow entities. Rainbow listened, her wings giving an occasional, impatient flick. When Twilight finished, Rainbow snorted. So, let me get this straight. Glue monsters are popping up because he... She jabbed a hoof at Naruto. Sticks out like a sore thumb in the magic department. And now one of them tried to grab him. And you want me to fly around and see if there's more creepy crawlies gathering at the edges? In essence, yes, Twilight said. Rainbow Dash grinned, a sharp, challenging expression. All right. I'm in. But... She turned back to Naruto. First, I want to see what you've got. Twilight says you're some kind of fighter from another world. Applejack says you've got a mean kick. I say, prove it. Race me. Rainbow, this is serious, Twilight protested. So am I. Rainbow shot back, her eyes never leaving Naruto's. If I'm gonna be watching your back from the skies, I need to know what you can do. Can you move? Or are you just monster bait? The challenge was direct, simple, and spoke to Naruto's core. This was a language he understood. Where to? Rainbow's grin widened. She pointed a wing at a distant, solitary cloud that hung over a hill on the horizon. First one to touch that cloud. No magic. Just wings. She looked at his earth pony body. Or whatever those things you run on are. It was a ludicrous mismatch. A Pegasus, the master of the sky, against an earth-bound creature in an unfamiliar body. It was like racing a hawk on foot. Naruto looked at the cloud, judging the distance. It was far. Very far. He felt the weight of his new form, the awkwardness of 4 legs. He thought of the body flicker, of the burst of chakra-enhanced speed. He couldn't do that. But he remembered the echo clones. The will made manifest. He couldn't fly. But maybe. You're on, he said, dropping into a crouch. It wasn't a runner's stance. It was the explosive launch posture of a shinobi about to use the Shunshin no Jutsu. He had no chakra to fuel it. He'd have to fuel it with something else. Applejack shook her head but smiled. Go get him, partner. Fluttershy covered her eyes with her hooves. Oh dear. Ready. Rainbow crouched, her wings spreading, powerful muscles coiling. Set. Go! She was a Saiyan rocket, a thunderclap of motion. She was 10 feet in the air in a heartbeat, then 100, streaking towards the cloud in a straight, brutal line of speed. Naruto pushed off. He didn't run. He launched. He poured every ounce of frustration, every iota of his desire to move, to be fast, to not be left behind, into his legs. He wasn't trying to harmonize with Equestria's magic. He was trying to punch a hole through it with pure kinetic intent. The result was not graceful. He didn't blur. He became a clumsy, orange cannonball of motion. His gallop was a pounding, earth-shaking drumbeat of hooves tearing at the turf. Clods of grass and dirt flew in his wake. He was impossibly fast for an earth pony, alarmingly fast, but he was a lumbering bull compared to Rainbow Dash's arrow. He saw her dwindling form, a speck nearing the cloud. Despair threatened to choke him. He was losing. Badly. Then a memory. Not of a jutsu, but of a principle. The Shunshin wasn't just about speed, it was about redirecting momentum. About using the environment. He couldn't run on air. But the land. Applejack's land, it was strong. It could give. As he pounded up the slope of the hill leading to the cloud, he didn't just push against the ground. He asked it for more. He thought of Applejack's buck, the solid transfer of power. He focused his will not just forward, but down, and then up. On his next stride, his forehoof came down not just to propel forward, but to reject the earth. He kicked off with a force that cracked the sod beneath him. He didn't jump. He catapulted. His body left the ground in a shallow, terrifying arc, covering 50 yards in a single, soaring bound. He landed in a rolling tumble that would have broken bones in his human body, but his new, stocky form absorbed the impact with a pained grunt. He was up and galloping again, now on the downhill slope. Rainbow Dash, who had just reached the cloud and was tapping it with a smirk, looked down. Her jaw dropped. The orange speck was halfway up the hill, moving in ridiculous, leaping surges. What the? Naruto hit the peak of the hill. The cloud was now below him, floating over the downward slope. Rainbow was hovering next to it, staring. He had no more hill to kick off from. He was at the crest, his momentum about to carry him into a downhill sprint. He'd lose in the straightaway. Think. The wind whipped at his cloak. The wind. He saw Rainbow's wings, manipulating air pressure, creating lift and thrust. He couldn't fly. But he could fall with style. He didn't run down the hill. He turned, put his back to the cloud, and took 3 running steps back the way he came. Then he planted his hind legs and pushed off with every shred of strength, leaping backwards into the open air over the downward slope. It was a mad, suicidal move. He was now falling backwards through the air, away from the cloud, picking up speed in a helpless drop. Rainbow Dash squinted. Did he just give up? What is he? Naruto, tumbling through the air, focused. He wasn't trying to control the wind. He was trying to borrow its shape. He flared his new cloak, the sturdy, shifting fabric rarity had made. He willed it to be a sail, a drag chute, a wing. He poured his intent into it, the same way he'd poured will into creating echoes. The cloak didn't magically stiffen. But the air around it rippled. The harmonic magic of Equestria, so resistant to his chakra, was fluid, malleable. It responded to strong, simple intentions. His desperate desire to redirect his fall pushed against the air itself. His backwards plummet curved. He wasn't flying, he was banking. Like a leaf caught in a sudden gust, his trajectory swept around in a wide, screaming arc. He was now hurtling sideways through the air, parallel to the hillside, a living projectile aimed directly at the cloud. Rainbow's eyes went dinnerplate wide. No way! Naruto shot past her, a blur of orange and green-gray, and slammed snout first into the fluffy white surface of the cloud. Poof! The cloud, not designed for such a forceful impact from an earth pony, dissipated instantly with a damp sputter. Naruto fell the last 10 feet, landing in a heap on the soft grass, covered in cold mist and dignity. Silence, save for the whistle of the wind. Rainbow Dash slowly descended, landing in front of him. She looked from the last wisps of the vanished cloud, to the deep gouges his gallop had left in the hillside, to the panting, disheveled pony in the fancy cloak. A slow, incredulous smile spread across her face. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a competitor who has just found a worthy opponent. You, she said, her voice full of awe. You cheated. You totally cheated. That was the most awesome, rule-breaking, completely insane thing I've ever seen. She thrust a hoof at him. You're okay, Naruto. For a ground pounder. Naruto, wheezing, managed to bump her hoof with his own. Then Rainbow's expression turned serious, her pilot's instincts kicking in. But we've got a problem. A big one. She pointed a wink towards the Everfree forest, which lay in a dark, tangled line on the horizon. While you were busy redefining running, I was scoping the perimeter. Like Twilight asked? It's not good. What did you see? Twilight asked, flying up on her own magic, a slower, more dignified process. Rainbow's cocky demeanor was gone, replaced by the focused calm of a soldier reporting in. The shadow stuff, it's not just popping up randomly. It's gathering. Along the entire western tree line of the Everfree, where the magic is wildest. It's like a stain, seeping into the edge of our world. And in the middle of it, she swallowed, her confidence faltering for the first time. There's a shape. Bigger than a house. It's not moving. It's just sitting there. Pulsing. And it's quiet. So quiet it makes your ears hurt. She looked at Naruto, her earlier challenge replaced by grim understanding. It's waiting for you. You're quiet one. And it's not alone. The whole forest is waking up, and it's hungry. The thrill of the race evaporated. The hunt was no longer theoretical. The predator had marked its territory, and it was building an army. Naruto got to his hooves, the new clothes feeling less like a presentation and more like a uniform for a war he never asked for. The adventure had just gotten a lot less funny. Chapter 8: Moonlight and Markings. The flight back to the library was silent, the weight of Rainbow Dash's report pressing down on them all. The cheery colors of Ponyville seemed garish now, a painted smile over a gathering sickness. Once inside, Twilight immediately began pulling down every book she had on dimensional theory, dark magic, and Everfree forest ecology, creating a fortress of parchment on the main table. We need a plan, she stated, her voice tight. A coordinated response. If this quiet one is amassing force, we cannot wait for it to strike Ponyville. Applejack stomped a hoof. We need to hit it first. Take the fight to the forest before it comes to our doorstep. But we don't know what it is, Fluttershy whispered, trembling. Or what it can do. Charging in could be a terrible mistake. Fluttershy's right, Rarity said, though she looked pale. This isn't a fashion emergency, It's a military one. We require intelligence. Which is why. A new, regal voice interjected from the doorway. You should have summoned me sooner. Every pony and Naruto turned. Framed in the library entrance was a tall, elegant alicorn. Her coat was a deep, night blue, scattered with a gleaming constellation of stars. Her mane and tail flowed with an ethereal, galaxy-like nebula of dark blues and purples. Her presence carried the cool, quiet gravity of midnight, and her sharp, teal eyes missed nothing. Princess Luna! Twilight gasped, scrambling into a bow. The others followed suit. Naruto just stared. This was power of a different order. Not the sweet, pervasive harmony of the land, nor the fierce, focused magic of twilight. This was ancient, cosmic, and edged with a melancholy that resonated with the lonely echo inside him. Princess Luna nodded, her gaze sweeping the room and settling on Naruto. She did not react with shock or fear. Her expression was one of profound, weary recognition. We have felt the disturbance in the dream realm for weeks now. A cold spot. A silence that devours whispers. We thought it a lingering nightmare, but it grew teeth and purpose. She stepped fully into the room, her starry mane casting soft, shifting light on the books. And now we see its source. A soul from beyond the celestial tapestry, woven with a thread of profound and chaotic power. You carry a titan's shadow within you, do you not, child of another sky? Naruto's breath caught. She saw it. She named it. Not a beast, not a monster, but a titan's shadow. He managed a stiff nod. It is that shadow, that dissonant, potent energy, that calls to the quiet one, Luna said, her voice low and musical. The being Rainbow Dash saw is likely an avatar, a focal point for the hunger gathering in the liminal spaces between your world's energy and ours. It seeks to consume your power to tear a permanent gate, a wound that would bleed shadow into Equestria forever. Can we stop it? Twilight asked, her voice small in the face of her mentor's solemnity. We must, Luna said. But you cannot fight a silence with shouts. Your friend here has begun to learn this. She looked at Naruto again, a flicker of something like approval in her eyes. Your echoes were a whisper of will. The land's response to your kick was a conversation of force. These are the beginnings of harmony, not with our song, but as a counter-melody. You must learn the rest, and quickly. How? Naruto asked, the words scraping from his throat. By understanding what you truly are here, Luna said. The mark of your purpose in Equestria has yet to manifest. But the magic of this world is responsive to identity. Your pony form is blank because you are still at war with yourself. You must find the synthesis. The ninja and the pony. The container and the shadow. Only then will you have the strength to face what comes. She turned to Twilight. We will reinforce the town's dream barriers and patrol the skies. But the heart of this conflict lies with him, and with the elements you bear. Prepare. The forest will not wait long. With a final, piercing look at Naruto, Princess Luna spread her wings and melted into a shower of moonlight and shadows, vanishing from the library as silently as she'd arrived. The silence she left behind was heavy. The course was set. All right, Applejack said, breaking the tension. No more messing around. Naruto, you're with me. If you're gonna find harmony with yourself, you'd best be on solid ground doing it. We're going to the one place no pony goes unless they're looking for a fight with their own soul. Where? Naruto asked. The heart of the Everfree. The castle of the two sisters. The Everfree forest lived up to its name. The moment they crossed the tree line, the world changed. The pastel light of Equestria died, filtered into a gloomy, green-tinged twilight by the dense, tangled canopy overhead. The air grew thick and humid, smelling of rich decay, exotic flowers with cloying perfumes, and a sharp, electric tang of wild, untamed magic. Plants grew in impossible, aggressive shapes. The sounds were not the cheerful chirps of Ponyville, but the distant cries of unknown animals and the constant, rustling whisper of things moving just out of sight. It was, Naruto realized with a start, the closest thing to the forest of death he'd encountered here. It felt alive, and not in a friendly way. They traveled in a tight group, Twilight leading with a magically glowing horn, Applejack and Naruto flanking her, Fluttershy and Rarity in the middle, Rainbow Dash circling overhead as a scout. Pinkie Pie had insisted on coming, claiming her pinky sense would be vital, and she moved with an uncharacteristic quietness, her ears swiveling constantly. The forest tested them immediately. A patch of snapdragon flowers tried to bite Applejack's tail. A stream of clear water suddenly surged, attempting to pull Rarity in. Rainbow Dash reported shadows moving parallel to their path, keeping pace. Naruto felt it most acutely. The wild magic of the Everfree didn't repel his chakra, it provoked it. The dull roar of the Nine Tails grew louder in his mind, agitated. His own energy, stifled for days, began to stir restlessly, responding to the forest's feral song. It was uncomfortable, like a limb waking from pins and needles, but it was also a relief. He could feel his power again, even if he couldn't shape it. After hours of tense travel, they emerged into a clearing. And there it was. The castle of the two sisters wasn't a ruin, it was a corpse. A majestic, beautiful corpse of white stone and soaring arches, now shattered and overgrown with vines and dark moss. It spoke of lost glory, of a battle that had rent the heavens. The silence here was deep, haunted, and somehow sacred. "This is where it happened," Twilight whispered, her voice full of awe and sorrow. "Where Princess Luna became Nightmare Moon. Where harmony was broken, and then remade." The weight of history pressed down. Naruto understood places like this. The Valley of the End, where Hashirama and Madara had fought. Sites where great power had clashed and left scars on the world itself. "Over here," Applejack said, leading them around a collapsed wall to a surprisingly intact courtyard. In its center stood a stone dais, and on it, etched into the floor, was a massive, circular design, 6 pointed stars around a central jewel. The elements of harmony. "Stand on it," Applejack said to Naruto. "What? Why?" "This place remembers true harmony," Twilight explained, her scientific curiosity battling with reverence. "The magic here is primal. If your purpose in our world is to find a new harmony, this is the place it might crystallize." Hesitantly, Naruto stepped onto the central jewel of the carving. The moment his hooves touched the cold, ancient stone, a jolt went through him. The murmuring forest fell silent. The restless chakra within him roared to the forefront, a brilliant, orange-gold blaze of energy that suddenly had an outlet. It wasn't being repelled. The wild magic of the ever-free and the sacred resonance of the castle conducted it. He gasped as light, his own chakra visible for the first time in this world, erupted from him, not in a controlled stream, but in a chaotic, swirling vortex. The ponies shielded their eyes. The vortex of chakra twisted around him, and he felt a searing heat on his flanks. The light intensified, then collapsed inwards with a sound like a thunderclap. Naruto stumbled, panting. The display was over. He looked back, dread and hope warring in his chest. There, on his left flank, was a cutie mark. It was not a simple picture. It was a complex, circular emblem. In the center was a stylized, swirling orange foxtail. Encircling it was a ring of black, like a sealing formula, and around that, a border of 6 tiny symbols: an apple, a butterfly, a diamond, a lightning bolt, a balloon, and a star, the symbols of the 6 ponies around him. The mark of the Titan's shadow, bound by a seal, surrounded by the elements of harmony. It was him. All of him. The container, the prisoner, and the unexpected, desperate friendships that were holding him together. "Whoa!" Rainbow Dash breathed. Before any pony could react further, the temperature in the courtyard plummeted. The vibrant greens and browns of the forest leached away, leaving a monochrome world of gray. The shadows cast by the broken castle stretched, deepened, and detached themselves from the ground, rising like black ink in water. From every archway, from behind every shattered pillar, they emerged. Dozens of them. Not just blightlings, but larger, more formed creatures, equine shadows with jagged, crystal-like growths of void stuff on their backs. Silent. Advancing with chilling purpose. And at the far end of the courtyard, where the main doors of the castle had once stood, the air ripped. A tear in reality, black and bleeding streaks of sickly green, hovered in the air. From it stepped the Avatar. It was larger than Rainbow had described. The size of a large wagon, its form was a constantly shifting mass of solidified silence, shaped vaguely like a headless, multi-limbed horse. Where a head should be was a swirling vortex of absolute blackness, and in the center of that vortex, a single, pulsing green eye, slitted like a snake's, fixed directly on Naruto. The eye held a cold, ancient intelligence, and a hunger so vast it made the forest's wildness seem tame. A voice, not a sound but a pressure directly on their minds, spoke. "Anchor. The Quiet One offers release. Give us the Song of Chaos. Let the silence consume the discord." The army of shadows began to close in, a tightening noose of darkness in the grayscale world. Naruto, his new cutie mark burning on his flank like a brand, looked from the advancing horrors to the terrified but determined faces of the ponies beside him. Twilight's horn was alight, Applejack was braced, Rainbow Dash hovered with battle-ready fury, Fluttershy trembled but stood her ground, Rarity's magic shimmered around loose stones, and Pinkie Pie had a determined, unsmiling look he'd never seen before. The Quiet One didn't want to destroy Equestria. It wanted to consume him, and use his power to unmoor this world forever. He was the target. He was the weapon they wanted to turn. He felt the Ninetales' rage, a mirror to his own. He felt the new, resonant connection to the land, to the castle's memory of harmony. And he felt the fragile, powerful bonds to the 6 ponies who had, against all odds, chosen to stand with him. He wasn't a ninja here. He wasn't just a pony. He was Uzumaki Naruto. And his will was a force of nature. He stepped forward, placing himself between his friends and the void. The green eye in the darkness focused on him. You want my song? Naruto said, his voice echoing strangely in the gray silence. He felt power stirring, not chakra as he knew it, but something new, a fusion of his defiant will, the fox's immense power, and the harmonic magic of the elements that now literally marked him. It was volatile. It was unstable. It was his. He lowered his head, a pony's stance of challenge. A sphere of energy began to form not in his hand, but in the air before his chest, a swirling, chaotic orb of orange chakra and rainbow light, crackling with untamed power. Here's the chorus! He didn't have a name for the technique. It wasn't a Rasengan. It was a harmonic discord. He launched it. The sphere of fused energy screamed through the gray air, a spiraling comet of contradiction, order and chaos, harmony and defiance. It slammed into the front line of the Shadow Army. The effect was not an explosion. It was a cacophony. The sphere detonated in a silent shockwave of screaming color and conflicting frequencies. The shadow creatures didn't burn, they unraveled, their forms shredding into wisps of confused darkness that were then scoured away by the rainbow afterwash. The gray pallor over the courtyard shattered like glass, color and sound rushing back in a dizzying flood. The avatar reeled, its form rippling. The green eye blinked, for the first time showing something other than hunger, surprise, and a flicker of pain. You create noise, the mind voice grated, furious. Yeah! Naruto yelled back, grinning fiercely despite the bone-deep weariness that followed his attack. Get used to it! The battle was joined. But as Twilight's magic flared and Applejack charged, Naruto knew this was just the first clash. The Quiet One had felt his power now. And it would want it all the more. He had his mark. He had his purpose. And he had a world to protect. Chapter 9: The Festival of Fears. The aftermath in the castle courtyard was less a victory and more a temporary reprieve. The harmonic discord had shredded the frontline shadows and rattled the avatar, but it had not destroyed it. The massive entity of silence had retreated, flowing back into the tear in reality which sealed with a sound like a sigh, leaving behind only a chill and a faint, greasy smear on the air. The lesser shadows had melted away, but the oppressive, watchful feeling of the Everfree remained, now tinged with a new, focused malice. The journey back to Ponyville was a silent, exhausted trek. The surge of power that had created Naruto's cutie mark and the chaotic sphere had left him hollowed out, a different kind of depletion than chakra exhaustion. It felt as if he'd poured a piece of his soul into that attack. The mark on his flank, a permanent emblem of his duality, felt warm and strangely heavy. Twilight was a whirlwind of quiet anxiety, muttering about energy signatures and dimensional scar tissue. The others were subdued, the reality of the enemy, its intelligence, its power, its name, settling upon them like a frost. It was Pinkie Pie who broke the gloom as they finally emerged from the forest's edge. You know what this calls for? She announced, her voice lacking its usual explosive energy but carrying a firm resolve. A strategic retreat and fortification? Twilight offered. A nationwide alert to the princess? Rarity suggested. A really, really strong drink? Rainbow Dash mumbled. A party! Pinkie declared. They all stared at her. Pinkie, Applejack said slowly. We just got attacked by the embodiment of quiet horror. We're in no mood for streamers. Exactly. Pinkie bounced, a little of her old fire returning. That's why we need a party. A super-duper, extra special, loud, bright, laughing, sugar rush of a party. It's Nightmare Night in 2 days. The biggest, spookiest, most fun-filled noise fest of the year. If the Quiet One and its gloomy glooms hate happy sounds and parties so much, then let's make the biggest, happiest sound we can. We'll light up Ponyville so bright, the shadows won't dare come near. We'll fight silence with celebration. The logic was absurd. It was pure, unadulterated Pinkie Pie. And yet, as they looked at her determined face, a sliver of hope cut through the dread. It was a weapon they had. The welcome wagon had vaporized a para spirit. Laughter and light were their kryptonite. Twilight's analytical mind seized the idea. She's not entirely wrong. If these entities are antithetical to positive emotional energy and harmonic expression, then a concentrated outpouring of such energy could act as a defensive barrier. A psychological and magical deterrent. It's a battle of spirits, Fluttershy said softly, understanding. We have to keep ours bright. And so, Ponyville threw itself into Nightmare Night preparations with a frantic, desperate joy. It was no longer just a festival, it was a muster of arms. Pumpkins were carved not just with silly faces, but with intricate, glowing runes suggested by Twilight, which mostly just made them look cross-eyed and magical. Cobwebs were strung with glittering, chime-like threads that tinkled in the wind. The usual spooky sound effects were amplified. Recordings of ghastly moans and creaking doors were replaced by live bands practicing upbeat, driving music. Naruto, caught in the whirlwind, found himself assigned to atmospheric duties, with Pinky and Rainbow Dash. His task, as explained by Pinky: "We need maximum chaos. Maximum fun. You're a ninja. You're sneaky and surprising. So you're in charge of the grand ghastly gag." This involved, among other things, helping rig a complex series of pulleys and springs that would launch a cloud of candy corn like shrapnel from the town hall clock tower at midnight. He also found his transformation jutsu, now slightly more reliable in his pony form, had a hilarious new application. With concentration, he could shift his appearance for a few minutes. Pinky had him practice turning into perfect copies of the other ponies, then popping up in unlikely places to offer candy. "It's not a combat clone," he grumbled after the 10th attempt, shifting back to his own orange form with a puff of smoke. "But it's something." "It's perfect," Pinky cheered. "Imagine the look on Applejack's face when she sees 3 of herself handing out candied apples." The night before the festival, a parcel arrived for him. It was from Rarity. Inside was a costume. Not a pony costume, but a stylized, dramatic version of his own old ninja gear, a black, simplified approximation of his orange jacket, a headband with a metal plate styled to look like a Konoha symbol, though it was just a fancy leaf, and bandage-like wraps for his hooves. It was a costume of himself, as seen through equestrian eyes. Putting it on felt strangely empowering, like reclaiming a piece of his identity in a way his actual, tattered jacket no longer could. The evening of Nightmare Night arrived. Ponyville was transformed. A defensive, joyful cacophony replaced the usual charming spookiness. Lights blazed everywhere, banishing all but the most stubborn shadows. Music thrummed through the streets, a chaotic medley of jazz, polka, and rock. The air was thick with the smells of caramel apples, popcorn, pumpkin spice, and the sharp, clean scent of ozone from overcharged magical decorations. Naruto moved through the crowds in his costume, accepted as just another festive oddity. He saw foals dressed as dragons, princesses, and even a few clumsy attempts at two-legged creatures that might have been meant to look like him. He laughed, a real, unforced sound that surprised him. For a few hours, the looming terror of the Quiet One was held at bay by a wall of light and noise. He was perched on a rooftop, overseeing his candy corn cannon mechanism, when he saw her. Near the edge of the festivities, where the light began to fray into darkness, stood a Pegasus mare he didn't recognize. Her coat was a soft, dusky gray, her mane a silvery cascade that seemed to hold moonlight even under the festival lanterns. She wore a simple, elegant cloak and was watching the celebrations with a curious, slightly sad smile. Her eyes, a striking shade of violet, met his across the crowd. Something about her stillness amidst the chaos drew him. He dropped down from the roof, landing with a much softer thud than he would have in his old body, and made his way over. "Not dressed up?" he asked, nodding to her lack of costume. She turned, and her smile warmed slightly. "I suppose I am, in a way. Just something quiet." Her voice was low, melodic, with a hint of a wistful tremor. "It's quite a spectacle, isn't it? So much life." "They're trying to scare off the dark," Naruto said, the truth slipping out before he could guard it. The mare's violet eyes studied him, seeing past the costume ninja headband. "You're the one they're protecting, aren't you? The anchor?" Naruto tensed. "How do you know that?" "The same way you know the dark is more than just an empty space tonight," she said, looking past him towards the black line of the Everfree. "I can feel it too. The silence pushing against the noise. My name is Celine." "Naruto." "I know." She looked back at him, and her expression was one of profound empathy. "It's a heavy thing, to be the focal point of a war between songs. To have a power within you that everyone wants, to use, to seal, or to consume." His breath hitched. She spoke as if she knew about the Nine Tails. "What are you?" "A listener," she said simply. "I've always been good at hearing the quieter melodies. The lonely ones. The ones in the dark." She took a step closer, and the festival sounds seemed to fade around them. "Your melody is incredible. A roar of fire and a whisper of wind, bound together by a chain of incredible will. It's beautiful. And it's in terrible pain." No one had ever called the power inside him beautiful. Monstrous, yes. Dangerous, always. But beautiful? The word disarmed him completely. "They're throwing a party to fight your battle for you," Celine continued, her voice barely a murmur now. "But some battles have to be faced alone. In the quiet. The Quiet One, it doesn't understand noise. It understands hunger. And loneliness. Perhaps, it doesn't need an enemy. Perhaps it needs to be heard." Her words echoed Fluttershy's, but deeper, more intimate. They wormed their way into the lonely, angry place where the fox's presence lived. Before he could form a response, the clock tower began to chime midnight. "Showtime!" Pinky's magnified voice echoed through the town. "Fire the candy corn cannon!" Naruto had a job to do. He tore his gaze from Celine's understanding eyes. "I have to go." She just nodded. "Find me, if you need to listen to the quiet. I'm never far from the edge of things." He rushed back to his position, his mind reeling. As he pulled the lever, launching a spectacular, sugary explosion over the cheering town, his thoughts were not on the celebration, but on a pair of sad, violet eyes and an offer to listen to the roar. The festival reached its peak, a tsunami of joy and light. And for a moment, it seemed to work. The sense of impending dread lifted. Ponies laughed, children screamed with delight, and the night felt safe. It was in that moment of supreme, defended happiness that the quiet one struck. Not at the town. At the library? While every pony was distracted in the town square, a localized, profound silence fell over the Golden Oaks library. The lights within winked out. The sounds of the festival became muffled, as if heard through thick wool. From the inky blackness of the Everfree, a single, refined tendril of shadow, no thicker than a rope, had slithered through the unguarded periphery. It wasn't an army. It was a scalpel. Its target, not Naruto, but the repository of knowledge. The source of their understanding. Spike, who had stayed behind to organize some of Twilight's notes, let out a yelp that was instantly swallowed by the silence. The tendril of shadow wrapped around the thick, leather-bound journal containing all of Twilight's observations on Naruto, his chakra, the dimensional theories, and the weaknesses of the shadow entities. With a soundless flick, it vanished back into the night, taking the book with it. The silence retreated. The library lights flickered back on. Spike stood in the middle of the room, clutching his chest, surrounded by undisturbed books. Only one was missing. The most important one. The victory of the festival was hollow. The Quiet One had just stolen their playbook. It now knew everything they knew about Naruto's power, their theories, their fears. And Naruto, standing amid the cheering crowd covered in candy corn, felt a new kind of chill. The enemy wasn't just strong. It was clever. And it had just learned all his secrets. The love he'd felt from the town, the connection with the mysterious Celine, the thrill of the fight, it all crystallized into a cold, hard truth. The real battle wasn't in the noisy celebrations. It was in the silent places, where knowledge was power, and loneliness was the deepest vulnerability of all. Chapter 10: The Whisper of the Void. The stolen journal was a quiet, devastating bomb. In the cold light of the post-festival morning, the library felt violated. The gap on Twilight's desk was a screaming void. She paced, her hooves wearing a new path in the rug, her face a mask of controlled horror. "It has our data. Our hypotheses on chakra harmonic interaction. My notes on Naruto's psychological state, his connection to the elements, the theorized weaknesses of the shadow entities based on their reaction to positive energy." Her voice was clipped, clinical, but it trembled at the edges. "It will adapt. It will prepare countermeasures. Our only advantage, surprise and understanding, is gone." Applejack's practical nature turned grim. "So we hit it now. For it can use what it stole." "And do what?" Rainbow Dash snapped, her usual bravado frayed by the insidious nature of the theft. "Charge in blind? It knows what we're gonna do." Perhaps we could try talking to it," Fluttershy offered, her voice tiny. "Like Celine said? If it understands loneliness." "Celine?" Twilight's head snapped up. "Who is Celine?" Naruto, who had been staring out the window at the too-cheerful town, felt all eyes turned to him. He recounted the meeting with the Grey Pegasus, her strange words, her offer to listen to the quiet. Twilight's horn glowed as she summoned a census ledger. Her eyes scanned the pages, her frown deepening. "There is no registered Pegasus in Ponyville or the surrounding settlements named Celine. A nomadic traveler, perhaps?" She closed the book with a thud. "Her advice is dangerously naive. This entity isn't a misunderstood creature, it's a predatory intelligence that feeds on dissonance and seeks to unravel reality. Listening to it could mean being consumed by its silence." A heavy silence, different from the quiet ones, fell over the room. They were leaderless, outmaneuvered. It was then that the letter arrived. Not by royal guard, but by an ordinary-looking sparrow that tapped insistently on the window. Tied to its leg was a tiny scroll. Spike took it, unfurled it, and read aloud, his voice hesitant. "To the bearer of the discordant heart. The Quiet One has tasted your song. It has studied the sheet music stolen from your librarian. It now composes a counter-symphony of stillness, to be performed at the next moon's zenith, in the place where harmony first shattered. You fight a war of noise against silence. But the void cannot hear your shouts. It can only feel the tremors of a deeper truth. Your power is a scream of connection, to a beast, to a world, to friends. Its power is the absence of all connection. To defeat a vacuum, you must not fill it with sound. You must become the unbreakable vessel that contains it. Find the memory in the madness. The seal within the self. The room was dead quiet. Celine, Rarity whispered. But how? Pinkie Pie began, her mane deflating slightly. It doesn't matter, Naruto said, his voice low. He turned from the window. The letter, cryptic as it was, resonated with a brutal truth. Fighting the Quiet One on its terms, a battle of overwhelming force, had only led to a stalemate. It had outthought them. The letter spoke of a different path. Not attack, not defense. Containment. The place where harmony first shattered, Twilight murmured. The castle of the two sisters. The next moon's zenith, that's in 3 nights. And the seal within the self? Applejack asked. What in tarnation does that mean? Naruto knew. He felt the weight of the knowledge in his gut, and the warm presence of the mark on his flank. The Nine Tails was sealed within him by a complex, powerful Fuinjutsu placed by his father, the 4th Hokage. His entire life had been defined by that seal. It was the ultimate expression of containment, of turning a destructive force into a protected power source. It means I have to do what was done to me, he said, the words tasting like ash. I have to seal it away. The pony stared, not fully understanding the magnitude of what he suggested, but sensing the grim finality in his tone. We'll help, Rainbow Dash said immediately, her loyalty flaring. Just tell us what to do. You can't, Naruto said, shaking his head. It's a ninja thing. A Fuinjutsu thing. It's about my chakra, my will, and… He touched his flank where the stylized seal encircled the foxtail in his mark. And the power I have here. I have to combine them. I have to learn to seal something with the very energy that's attracting it. The following days were a frantic, focused torment. With the clock ticking, Twilight became a research demon, scouring every text on advanced magical containment, barrier spells, and historical equestrian sealing rituals, which were primitive compared to the intricate art of Fuinjutsu. Naruto spent hours in the library's basement, trying to recall every detail of the 8 trigram seal he'd seen on his own abdomen in reflection, of the complex formulae Jiraiya had tried to teach him, of the feel of his father's chakra during their few meetings. He couldn't write. Hooves and mouths were useless for the precise brushstrokes of a sealing formula. In desperation, he used his transformation jutsu to temporarily shift his hoof into a crude, clumsy approximation of a human hand. Holding a brush, he painstakingly began to sketch the foundational lattice of a seal on large sheets of parchment. The transformation was draining, the hand shape unstable, and the results were messy, but it was a start. The ponies helped in the only ways they could. Applejack brought him food and kept a steady, silent vigil, her presence a grounding stone. Fluttershy would sit in the corner, humming the gentle, harmonic tunes of the forest, helping to keep the agitated roar of the Ninetales in his mind from spiking into panic. Rarity, using her exceptional eye for detail and symmetry, helped him correct wobbly lines and suggested aesthetic improvements that, to his surprise, actually seemed to stabilize the flow of magic he was trying to imbue into the ink, a special mixture Twilight concocted from crushed gemstones and moonflower extract. Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie were on constant perimeter patrol, their contrasting energies, focused speed and chaotic awareness, scanning for any sign of the Quiet One's scouts. The town remained on edge, the festive lights of Nightmare Night now feeling like a grim memorial. The night before the zenith, Naruto thought he had it. A hybrid seal. The 8 trigrams foundation of his father, inverted and expanded, its interior space not designed to contain a beast of chakra, but an entity of anti-sound, of consuming silence. The outer ring was based on the elements of harmony, the 6 symbols from his cutie mark, meant to bind the seal to the very reality the Quiet One sought to unravel. He showed it to Twilight. She analyzed it with every magical diagnostic spell she knew. The theoretical energy matrix is breathtaking and terrifyingly unstable. It's a paradox. You're using your own dissonant energy as the locking mechanism on a cage designed for silence. The two forces will be in constant conflict inside the seal. It could hold forever, or it could shatter in an instant. That's the best I've got, Naruto said, his voice rough from exhaustion and concentration. That evening, as a deep purple twilight settled, he went for a walk to clear his head. He found himself drawn, not to the bright town square, but to the whispering edge of the Everfree. He stood there, smelling the wild, dangerous perfume of the forest, feeling the familiar, cold tug of the void on the edge of his senses. A soft rustle of wings behind him. He turned. Celine stood there, her gray coat almost invisible in the gloom, her silver mane catching the last of the daylight. Her violet eyes were solemn. "You're ready," she said. It wasn't a question. As I'll ever be, he replied. Your letter. It helped. Thank you. She took a step closer. The air around her was still, but not the dead stillness of the quiet one. It was the calm of deep water. The seal you've designed, it is a work of brutal beauty. A prison made from the bricks of your own pain and the mortar of newfound bonds. It may hold, but it will cost you. What do you mean? To activate such a seal, to impose order on a force of primordial disorder, requires a catalyst. A sacrifice. Not of life, but of connection. Her gaze was unbearably sad. The power you've begun to weave with your friends here, the harmonic counter-melody. To forge the final lock, you may have to burn that bridge. The seal will be powered by your chakra, but anchored by their harmony. To complete it, you might sever the very link that allows you to resonate with this world at all. A cold deeper than any shadow's touch seeped into Naruto's bones. You mean I'd be cut off? From them? From all this? He gestured to the world behind him, the world of light and laughter he was fighting to protect. Perhaps. Or perhaps the connection will be changed. Muted. The price of containing such a void is a piece of the light used to bound it. She looked towards the castle, invisible in the forest's heart. The quiet one is not evil, Naruto. It is emptiness. It is the silence after the song ends. It wants your chaos because chaos is the opposite of its nature. To give it what it wants is annihilation. To destroy it may be impossible. To contain it is to make a part of yourself a tomb for the antithesis of your own being. She reached out a wing, the feathers brushing his shoulder with a softness that held the weight of galaxies. I will be there. At the edge. Listening. If your song falters, I will remember its tune. Before he could ask her what she meant, she melted back into the gathering night, leaving him alone with a terrible choice. Victory meant saving Equestria. Victory might also mean losing the first place that had ever tried to see him for who he was, not what he held. He looked down at his hooves, at the mark of the bound fox surrounded by friends. He thought of Applejack's solid honesty, Fluttershy's gentle strength, Rarity's generous brilliance, Rainbow Dash's fierce loyalty, Pinkie Pie's chaotic joy, and Twilight's insatiable, caring curiosity. He had to protect them, even if it meant building a wall between their world and his own heart. The moon rose, cold and full, marking the final day. The zenith was coming. Chapter 11, The Breaking Point. The day of the zenith dawned not with sunlight, but with a pall of unnatural twilight. A thick, bruise-colored fog had rolled in from the Everfree, smothering Ponyville in a silence so profound it felt like cotton stuffed in the ears. The cheerful scents of morning were gone, replaced by the damp, metallic odor of charged ozone and cold stone. It was the Quiet One's overture, a demonstration of its growing power. Inside the library, the air crackled with a different kind of tension. The 6 ponies and Naruto stood around the central table, upon which lay the large, completed sealing scroll. The hybrid formula, a marriage of sharp, angular Fuinjutsu lines and the flowing, harmonious curves of equestrian magic, glowed with a faint, internal light, a turbulent mix of orange and pastel rainbow. It was beautiful and dangerous, a captured storm on parchment. Twilight's eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, but her voice was steady. The theory is sound. The seal's matrix is designed to act as a metaphysical drain, targeting the specific frequency of negation the Quiet One emits. Once activated, it should create a localized inversion field, drawing the entity's essence into the scroll and locking it within the paradoxical loop of its own silence and Naruto's enforced harmony. In pony terms? Applejack grunted, her gaze fixed on the distant, fog-shrouded forest. We slapped the sticky note of ultimate containment on the big glowy quiet thing, Pinkie Pie said, her mane flat and her voice uncharacteristically monotone. Essentially, Twilight conceded. Naruto said nothing. He was stretching, feeling the unfamiliar muscles of his pony body. He wasn't preparing for a jutsu, he was preparing for a ritual. Celine's warning echoed in his mind. You may have to burn that bridge. He looked at each of them, memorizing the details, the set of Applejack's jaw, the worried wrinkle on Fluttershy's brow, the determined glint in Rainbow's eyes. He pushed the thought of loss away. It was a distraction. The mission was all that mattered. All right, he said, his voice cutting through the thick air. We stick to the plan. Twilight, Applejack, you're with me at the castle. You're my anchors. The rest of you, you're the perimeter. Your job is to keep the Shadow Army off our backs. No matter what you see, no matter what you hear, you keep the space around the seal clear. Understood? Nods all around, grim and determined. They moved out into the eerie fog. Ponyville was a ghost town, ponies having heeded the princess's orders to shelter in their basements. Their hoofsteps were muffled, their breathing loud in the stifling quiet. The journey to the Everfree felt like walking into a giant, waiting mouth. The forest was worse. The fog here was alive, coiling around the gnarled trees like possessive serpents. The usual wild sounds were utterly absent, No bird calls, no insect buzz, not even the rustle of leaves. It was a vacuum. The only sound was the pounding of Naruto's own heart and the soft, synchronized steps of his friends. They reached the castle clearing. The ruins looked like a fossil half swallowed by the oppressive gray. The stone dais with the elements carving was an island in a sea of fog. This was the stage. Positions, Naruto whispered. Rainbow Dash gave a sharp salute and shot into the soupy sky, becoming a blurred, cyan guardian angel. Pinkie Pie, Fluttershy, and Rarity fanned out, taking cover behind broken pillars and crumbling walls, their eyes scanning the shifting gloom. Naruto, Twilight, and Applejack stepped onto the dais. Twilight's horn lit with a steady lavender glow, a tiny beacon in the vast quiet. Applejack planted her hooves on the carving of her element, the apple, her connection to the land a grounding cable. Naruto unrolled the sealing scroll in the center of the dais. The glowing formulae blazed brighter, pushing back the fog for a few precious feet. He knelt before it, placing his transformed, clumsy human hand on the activation matrix, a blank circle in the very center. Now we wait for the guest of honor, he muttered. They didn't have to wait long. The fog at the far end of the courtyard began to rotate, forming a slow, silent vortex. From its center, the avatar emerged. It was larger, more defined than before. The shifting silence had coalesced into a form of terrible elegance, a sleek, equine shape wrought from solidified darkness and jagged, emerald-green crystal that grew from its back like a fractured crown. The single, slitted green eye burned in the featureless void of its head. It did not walk, it flowed forward, the ground withering to dust beneath it. Behind it, the fog solidified into rows upon rows of shadow creatures. Not just blightlings, but taller, armored forms with crystal-tipped limbs, and flitting, bat-like shapes that blotted out what little light filtered through the canopy. An army of silence. You bring the cage, the mind voice hissed, a pressure that made their teeth ache. You offer yourself as the lock. The quiet one accepts. This isn't an offering, Naruto growled, his will flaring. It's an eviction notice. He slammed his hand down on the seal. The scroll erupted. Not with an explosion, but with a scream of conflicting energies. Beams of orange chakra and multicolored harmonic magic shot into the air, weaving together into a colossal, three-dimensional lattice that filled the clearing, a prison of light and will. The avatar shrieked, a true sound of agony this time, as the beams lashed around it, beginning to draw its substance into the scroll. The shadow army charged. Chaos erupted. Rainbow Dash became a living thunderbolt, a sonic boom cracking the silence as she tore through formations of bat shadows, her afterimage a rainbow's scythe. Pinkie Pie had produced a cannon that fired not confetti, but concentrated blasts of polka music and the smell of birthday cake, which caused entire ranks of blightlings to dissolve into confused, sputtering puddles of gloom. Rarity, with a fierce cry, used her telekinesis to hurl shattered castle stones wrapped in razor-sharp ribbons of silk, creating deadly, beautiful shrapnel storms. Fluttershy, her eyes wide with terror but her voice strong, stood on a broken pedestal and stared. A wave of pure, magically amplified maternal disapproval washed over the advancing shadows, freezing the front lines in place, their malevolent intent cowed by the sheer force of her compassionate will. Twilight and Applejack held their ground on the dais. Twilight's magic was a constant stream of protective barriers and disruptive bursts of arcane energy, deflecting crystal shards and shadowy lances aimed at Naruto. Applejack bucked any creature that got too close, her kicks now empowered by the land's magic, sending shadow soldiers flying apart like black sand. Naruto was the eye of the storm. He knelt, pouring every ounce of his being into the seal. His chakra, finally unrestrained and harmonized by the element's power flowing through his friends, surged into the matrix. He could feel the avatar's resistance, a vast, cold nothingness pushing back, trying to unwrite the seal's logic, to silence its power. Your connections are your weakness, the voice snarled in his mind. See. The avatar's green eye flashed. From the writhing mass of shadows, new forms coalesced. They were not generic monsters. They were mirrors. A shadowy duplicate of Applejack, its Stetson askew and eyes glowing green, charged the real Applejack with unnatural strength. A dark twilight fired beams of corrosive purple magic. A sinister Rarity entangled the real one in bonds of black lace. A gloomy Fluttershy emitted a wave of paralyzing fear. A joyless Pinkie fired streams of gray, nullifying sludge. A treacherous Rainbow Dash moved with silent, lethal speed. Each pony was suddenly fighting a corrupted, empowered version of themselves, a being that knew their every move, their every strength, and twisted it into a weapon. The tide turned. The real ponies were driven back, overwhelmed by fighting their own shadows. Twilight's barrier flickered under the assault of her double. Applejack grunted in pain as a shadowy hoof cracked against her ribs. A cry of despair from Rarity echoed across the courtyard. Naruto felt it. The harmonic power feeding the seal, The power drawn from their united stand wavered, fraying under the assault of their own doubts and fears given form. The seal's brilliant lattice dimmed. The avatar laughed, a soundless vibration of triumph. This is it, Naruto thought, desperation clawing at him. The connection is breaking. I'm losing them. Celine's words returned. To forge the final lock, you may have to burn that bridge. He couldn't win by drawing power from them. Not while they were under attack. The bridge was on fire. He had a choice: try to save the bridge, and lose everything, or use the fire itself. He made his choice. With a roar that was part human, part fox, and part pure, pony defiance, he did the unthinkable. He reached through the faltering harmonic link, not to draw power from his friends, but to draw the attention of the shadows attacking them. He poured his own chakra, raw and screaming with the Ninetales' fury, down the bounds of friendship. It wasn't a gentle harmonization. It was a hijacking. A massive, psychic shout. Hey! Uglies! Over here! Every shadow double's head snapped towards the dais. Their glowing green eyes fixated on Naruto, the source of the blinding, discordant energy. They abandoned the real ponies and converged on him in a single, unified wave of darkness. Naruto, no! Twilight screamed. It was what he wanted. The seal needed a target, a concentrated focus of the void. He had just given it one. But he was now the only target. The Shadow Army, led by the 6 powerful doubles, slammed into the dais. Twilight and Applejack were thrown back by the impact. Icy tendrils of darkness wrapped around Naruto's limbs, holding him fast. The Applejack shadow pinned his transformed hand to the scroll, preventing him from breaking contact. The Twilight shadow unleashed a beam of nullifying magic at the seal's lattice, trying to corrupt it from within. Agony. Cold that burned. Silence that screamed in his soul. He could feel the Quiet One's essence, vast and hungry, pushing against the weakened seal, inches from breaking free and consuming him. He was alone on the dais, surrounded by the manifestations of his friend's fears. The harmonic connection stretched to its breaking point. The bridge wasn't just burning, it was being used as a weapon against him. He looked past the snarling shadow of Rainbow Dash, past the leering Pinky Double, and met the eyes of the real ponies, battered and struggling to rise at the edge of the clearing. He saw their horror, their determination to reach him. He gave them a wobbly, bloody-toothed grin. Don't worry, he gasped, the cold leaching the warmth from his words. I've got a plan. It was a lie. He had no plan. He had only a desperate, last-ditch instinct, and a lifetime of never giving up. Chapter 12, The Fox's Roar, The Pony's Will. The cold was not of temperature, but of concept. It was the chill of erasure, seeping through Naruto's fur, into his muscles, towards the core of his being where his chakra and will resided. The shadow doubles held him fast. Their grips were like frozen iron, their glowing green eyes devoid of anything but a directive to negate. The Twilight double's corrupting beam sizzled against the seal's lattice, causing the brilliant structure of light to flicker and darken at the edges, like a film burning in a projector. From his vantage point, pinned and helpless, Naruto saw the real ponies fighting to get to him. Rainbow Dash was a battered streak, trying to break through a wall of bat shadows. Applejack was trading furious, echoing blows with her own double at the dais's edge, each impact sounding like stone cracking. Their struggles were desperate, fueled by loyalty and horror, but they were being held at bay. The harmonic power that had once flowed so strongly was now a frayed, screaming thread, stretched to snapping. The Quiet One's avatar loomed over it all, a sculpture of silent triumph. The green eye pulsed with a rhythm that mimicked a slow, devouring heartbeat. The cage crumbles. The anchor will be mine. The silence will be complete. Naruto's mind raced, a frantic animal in a trap. He couldn't access his chakra properly. The shadow's nullifying grip was stifling his energy pathways. The seal was failing. His friends were failing. The plan had failed. Deep within, in the mental space where he sometimes heard the growl, a new sound emerged. Not a growl of anger, but a snort of profound, exasperated contempt. Pathetic. The voice was gravelly, ancient, and vibrated through his very bones. It was not a thought, it was a presence, speaking directly into the heart of his consciousness. All this noise. All this harmony. You try to fight emptiness with friendship songs and pretty lights. You are a fool, boy. Naruto, internally, snarled back. What would you know, you overgrown furball? You're just sitting there. I am observing the inevitable. You are trying to cage a vacuum with a web of feelings. It is like trying to hold water with a sieve. The stronger you pull, the more slips through. A pause, filled with the psychic equivalent of a disdainful flick of a tail. This Quiet One, it is not a beast of rage like me. It is the absence of everything. To fight absence, you cannot use something. You must become nothing. That doesn't make any sense. Of course it doesn't. You think like a human. Like a pony. You think in terms of having and holding. This enemy thinks in terms of taking and unbeing. Your seal is clever. It tries to trap its nature by opposing it. That is why it fights. Offer it no opposition. The words clicked into place with terrifying clarity. Celine. To defeat a vacuum, you must not fill it with sound. You must become the unbreakable vessel that contains it. The fox was saying the same thing, in its own vicious way. The seal wasn't wrong. His approach was. He was trying to force the quiet one into the seal, a violent act of opposition. He was shouting into the void. The void simply absorbed the shout. He had to stop shouting. He had to become the silent, willing receptacle. But to do that, he had to let go. Of everything. Of his struggle. Of his need to protect. Of his very self as a separate thing from the void he was trying to contain. It was suicide of the soul. Outside, the twilight shadows beam scored a direct hit on a central nexus of the seal. A whole section of the latticework collapsed with a sound like shattering crystal. The avatar took a step forward, the ground crumbling into fine gray ash beneath it. The pressure of its silence doubled, a physical weight crushing Naruto's chest. Naruto! Applejack's real voice, raw with strain, cut through the din. He looked at her, at the genuine fear in her eyes, not for herself, but for him. He looked at Twilight, magic sputtering as she tried to reignite the seal. At Rainbow, at Pinky, at Rarity, at Fluttershy. They were fighting a war of sound and light for him. He couldn't win their way. But he couldn't win alone, either. You finally understand, the Ninetales' voice rumbled, a hint of something almost like grudging respect? The vessel must be strong. Stronger than what it contains. Your will is strong, boy. But it is scattered. You pour it into clones, into Rasengan, into friendship. You are a leaky cup. To hold the void, you must be a perfect sphere. No cracks. No holes. No, you. How? Naruto screamed internally. You know how. You have been doing it since the day you were born. You contain me. The truth was a lightning strike. The seal on his stomach, the 8-trigram seal, wasn't just a lock on a door. It was a boundary that defined him. It was the line between Uzumaki Naruto and the nine-tailed fox. His entire identity was built around being the container. He had to do it again. But this time, the thing he had to contain wasn't inside him. It was outside, vast and pressing in. He had to expand the definition of container to include it. He had to make the seal not a trap on parchment, but the nature of his own being. It was an impossible ask. The avatar took another step. The dais stones beneath Naruto began to crack, not from weight, but from a pervasive, unraveling decay. The shadow doubles leaned in, their cold leaching the very color from his vision. He had no time. He closed his eyes. He stopped fighting the cold. He stopped pulling against the shadows. He let go of the frantic need to channel chakra, to reinforce the seal, to save his friends. Instead, he turned his focus inward, to the very center of his being. To the place where the seal on his flank, the mark of the bound fox and the elements, pulsed with warmth. He didn't try to push energy out. He did the opposite. He began to pull in. Not chakra. Not magic. Intention. He pulled in the memory of Applejack's steadfast honesty, not as a feeling, but as a principle, unyielding truth. He pulled in Fluttershy's gentle kindness as boundless compassion. Rarity's generosity as selfless creation. Rainbow Dash's loyalty as unbreakable bond. Pinkie Pie's laughter as indomitable joy. Twilight's magic as relentless understanding. And he pulled in the Ninetales' own immense, chaotic power, not as a beast to be controlled, but as primal will, the raw, unstoppable force of existence itself. He didn't mix them. He let them be, distinct and powerful, and he built a mental space around them. A vast, internal cathedral. He was not the cathedral. He was the foundation. The silent, unmoving ground upon which it all stood. He then turned his awareness outward, to the crushing, silent pressure of the quiet one. He didn't push against it. He invited it in. Not to consume him. To fill the space he had just created. Foolish, the mind voice hissed, sensing the shift. You offer yourself. I'm not offering, Naruto whispered, his voice barely audible, yet it carried through the clearing with unnatural clarity. I'm defining. He opened his eyes. They were no longer just blue. They were a whirlpool of orange chakra, shot through with streaks of rainbow light. The shadow doubles recoiled, their grips loosening as if burned. On the dais, the physical ceiling scroll burst into white-hot flames and dissolved. Its work was done. The formula wasn't on parchment anymore. It was on him. The complex, hybrid pattern of the seal, the Fuinjutsu lattice, the harmonic symbols, manifested across his entire body, glowing through his fur and the new clothes, a living tattoo of containment. The light did not push back the fog, it calmed it. It created a sphere of absolute, focused stillness around him, a stillness not of absence, but of perfect, poised potential. The avatar froze. Its green eye widened in confusion. The void it projected met not a wall, but an event horizon. It was being drawn in, not by force, but by the gravitational pull of a completed system. No. This is not consumption. This is inclusion. The voice was no longer a commanding pressure. It was a bewildered whisper. Naruto stood up. The shadow double shattered like glass, reverting to formless mist that was sucked into the glowing pattern on his body. He took a step towards the avatar. "You're not a scream," he said, his voice echoing with multiple tones, his own, the fox's growl, and the harmonic resonance of 6 ponies. "You're the silence after. Every story has one. You belong inside the story, not outside, trying to end it." He reached out a hoof. Not to attack. To touch the center of the avatar's form, where the green eye pulsed. The moment his hoof made contact, there was no explosion. There was an implosion. A soundless, breathtaking inversion. The massive form of the avatar, the army of shadows, the oppressive fog, all of it streamed inward, like water down a cosmic drain. The green eye was the last to go, its light dimming from malevolent intelligence to simple, captured energy before it winked out, drawn into the complex seal now burning on Naruto's chest. The clearing was silent. But it was the clean, empty silence of a deep breath held, not the suffocating silence of the void. The eerie gray fog was gone. The ever-freeze normal, wild sounds cautiously returned, a distant bird call, the rustle of leaves. Color flooded back into the world. Naruto stood alone in the center of the dais, the brilliant seal marks fading from his body, sinking beneath his fur until only his cutie mark remained, glowing faintly. He swayed, the metaphysical weight of what he had just done settling upon him. He didn't feel the quiet one raging within him. He felt a new space. A chamber in the cathedral of his soul, now occupied by a profound, managed stillness. He looked up. The 6 ponies stared at him, bruised, battered, and utterly stunned. The bridge wasn't burned. He had used its materials to build a fortress. Kurama's voice, quieter now, echoed in the new quiet of his mind. "Humph. Not bad, kid. For a leaky cup dot." Then, the world tilted sideways, and Naruto's eyes rolled back in his head as he collapsed, unconscious, onto the cold stone of the ancient castle floor. Chapter 13. The Aftermath of the Zenith. Consciousness returned to Naruto in fragments, like pieces of a shattered stained glass window slowly being put back together. First came sensation, the overwhelming, bone-deep ache of a body that had been used as a metaphysical lightning rod. Every muscle fiber, every nerve ending, felt scorched and frayed. Then came sound, a soft, steady beeping, the rustle of starched fabric, and the distant, muffled murmur of voices. Finally, smell, the sharp, clean scent of antiseptic, the faint floral hint of polished wood, and underlying it all, the sweet, unmistakable ozone of powerful, benign magic. He wasn't in the library. The ceiling above him was high, arched, and crafted from white marble veined with gold. Sunlight streamed through tall, elegant windows. A hospital. But not like any in Konoha. He tried to sit up, and a wave of dizziness and pain forced a grunt from his lips. "Ah. You're awake! Don't try to move, darling, you're quite thoroughly wrung out." Rarity's face swam into view above him, her usual perfect coiffure slightly askew, a bandage wrapped neatly around her foreleg. Her eyes, though tired, shone with relief. "Where?" Naruto's voice was a dry croak. "Canterlot Castle Infirmary." Twilight's voice came from his other side. She was seated in a chair, a mountain of scrolls and books on a side table, but her attention was fully on him. Dark circles hung under her eyes, but her gaze was bright with a feverish mix of concern and intellectual fervor. "You've been unconscious for 3 days. You suffered extreme magical feedback and, well, we're calling it dimensional strain. Princess Celestia and Princess Luna themselves have been overseeing your care." 3 days. The memories flooded back, the castle, the shadow doubles, the avatar, the impossible choice, the feeling of the void being drawn into the space he'd carved within himself. He instinctively looked down at his chest, his hoof brushing his fur. No glowing seal. Just his orange coat and the fabric of the clothes Rarity had made, now clean but bearing a few new, faintly singed edges. "It's gone?" he asked. "Contained," Twilight corrected gently. "Our diagnostics are inconclusive. We can detect no foreign magical presence within you, But there's a quality to your own energy signature that's different. Calmer. Deeper. As if you've integrated a vast empty space and made it a part of your foundation. She levitated a glowing crystal orb near him. It pulsed with a soft, steady white light. See? It registers your life force as stable. Exceptionally stable. Almost tectonically so. The door opened, and the rest of the main six filed in, followed by the two regal alicorns. Princess Celestia's solar warmth filled the room, a comforting counterpoint to Princess Luna's more reserved, starlit presence. All of them bore signs of the battle, small bandages, a slight limp in Applejack's step. One of Rainbow Dash's wings was in a sleek, blue sling. Naruto, Celestia said, her voice like a gentle, firm sunrise. Equestria owes you a debt that can never be fully repaid. You faced a threat to the very fabric of our reality and did not defeat it with violence, but with an act of profound understanding and sacrifice. Sacrifice? Naruto rasped, pushing himself up more determinedly against the pillows. I'm still here. You're all still here. Luna stepped forward, her teal eyes seeing more than the physical. You sacrificed the simplicity of your own nature. You were a vessel for one powerful, chaotic entity. Now you are a vessel for that entity in a captured fundamental absence. You have harmonized discord and void within your own soul. That is a weight no being should have to bear. Her gaze held a deep, shared understanding of carrying heavy burdens. The silence is now a part of your song. It will change you. Before Naruto could process that, Pinkie Pie bounced over, though her bounce was more of a pained hobble. She held a tray with a single, perfect, steamy bowl on it. We didn't know what ramen was, but Twilight had notes on its composition. The castle chefs tried their best. It's a noodle soup with a funny curly thing and a pink fish cake. Naruto looked at the bowl. The broth was a rich, golden color, not quite right. The noodles were a bit too thick. The narutomaki was a pale imitation. But the smell, it was warm, savory, and infused with a magical care he could almost taste. It was the most beautiful thing he'd seen in this world. He took the bowl in his hooves. They'd removed his bandages, he noticed, the warmth seeping into his aching bones. He took a sip of the broth. It wasn't Ichiraka's. It was something else. It tasted like comfort, like effort, like a bunch of ponies in a royal kitchen trying desperately to recreate a taste of home for a friend who had none. A lump formed in his throat that had nothing to do with the noodles. It's great, he managed, his voice thick. A collective sigh of relief went through the room. The formal tension broke. Rainbow Dash grinned. Told you he'd like it. Now eat up, ground pounder. You need your strength. We've got a victory party to plan, and you're the guest of honor. A quiet one maybe, but a party. As he ate, they filled him in. The everfree forest had receded to a calmer, though still wild, state. No further shadow incursions had been detected. The journal stolen during Nightmare Night had been found, discarded and blank, its knowledge apparently absorbed and used. The town of Ponyville was already rebuilding, the fear replaced by a fierce, proud joy. But as they talked and laughed, a quiet, nagging feeling grew in Naruto's gut. He had done it. He had saved the day. He had friends, real friends, who saw him for who he was. He had a full belly, of almost ramen. He was a hero in a magical kingdom. And yet, a hollow echo remained. Not the quiet one's void, that was integrated, managed. This was the echo of a different silence. The silence of a Hokage's face carved in stone he'd never see again. The silence of ramen shared with a grumpy old man who wasn't here to tease him. The silence of a rival's arrogant smirk, of a teammate's exasperated sighs. The silence of his own world. Later, when the others had left to give him rest, only Twilight remained, tidying her scrolls. Twilight, he said, staring out the window at the impossibly graceful spires of Canterlot. The portal I came through. The tree. Is there any way to reopen it? To make it a door? Not just for me to leave, he added quickly, seeing her worried look. But a real door. Back and forth. Twilight's wings rustled. Theoretically, perhaps. The initial portal was an unstable anomaly, a tear caused by the clash of your chakra with our harmonic field. Now that your energy is integrated, and we have extensive data on the event, we might be able to engineer a stable aperture. It would be the magical equivalent of building a bridge across a chasm, using the unique resonance of your sealed energies as the anchor points on both sides. Her eyes lit up with the challenge. It would be the project of a lifetime. Interdimensional thaumaturgical engineering. We need to study your world's energy laws, find a compatible anchor point there, perhaps even. She trailed off, seeing the look on his face. You really want to go back? I have to, he said simply. It's my home. My village, they might think I'm dead. I have responsibilities. He thought of the promise to bring Sasuke back, of becoming Hokage. Those dreams felt both distant and more urgent than ever. And then what? Twilight asked softly. You'll just leave? Naruto looked at her, at the library-loving, friendship-obsessed pony who had dissected his magic and fought a shadow of herself for him. I was thinking, he said, a slow, familiar grin spreading across his face, that a Hidden Leaf village could really use a Ponyville-style ambassador. And vice versa. Believe it! Twilight's worried expression melted into a brilliant, hopeful smile. The scholar in her warred with the friend, and both won. A cultural and magical exchange program. The applications for peace, understanding, and mutual defense are astounding. The path forward was clear. Heal. Learn about this new stability within him. And then, with the help of the greatest magical mind in Equestria and the power of 6 unbreakable friendships, build a door. Not an escape. A connection. The adventure was no longer about survival. It was about building a bridge between two songs, with his own complex, newly quieted melody as the keystone. Chapter 14. The Bridge of Two Worlds. The air in the Canterlot Royal Observatory was thick with the smell of ozone, old parchment, and the peculiar, coppery scent of concentrated starlight. It was a room designed for looking out, but today its focus was turned entirely inward, on a circle etched into the polished obsidian floor. The circle was no simple diagram, it was a masterpiece of collaborative insanity, a fusion of equestrian enchantment and Yuzushiagawa-inspired fuinjutsu, drawn with ink made from crushed moonstone, phoenix ash, and a single drop of Naruto's own blood. Naruto stood in the center, the focal point. He was back in his own body, the human one. The return had been a shock. After months in a pony form, feeling his own bipedal shape, his own hands, had been dizzyingly familiar and yet strangely alien. His orange jacket, mended and cleaned by rarity, felt both like a second skin and a costume from another life. The weight of the Quiet One's containment was different here, not a physical mark, but a deep, internal stillness, a new chamber in his soul, as Kurama had said. The fox's presence, too, felt contemplative in the silence. Surrounding the circle were the architects of the impossible. Princess Celestia and Princess Luna stood at the northern and southern points, their horns aglow with complementary solar and lunar magics, providing the vast, stable power source. Twilight's sparkle was a whirlwind of nervous energy at the eastern point, a dozen floating scrolls orbiting her head as she made last-minute calculations, her horn acting as the precise conductor. And on the western point stood Uzumaki Naruto, not as a subject, but as a component. His chakra, now tempered and integrated with the harmonic resonance of Equestria and the managed void, was the unique key. The rest of the main 6 watched from a shielded balcony above, their faces a mix of awe, anxiety, and fierce pride. Remember, Twilight's voice echoed in the vast chamber, tense with focus. This isn't about forcing a hole. It's about resonance. Your chakra signature is now hybridized. We're using the equestrian harmonic component to search for the echo of your original departure point in your world, and the contained void silence to stabilize the edges of the tunnel, preventing collapse. You must be the conduit. You must sing both songs at once. Naruto took a deep breath. He closed his eyes. He reached inward, past the familiar swirl of his own immense chakra, past the growling, watchful presence of Kurama, to the new space. The Chamber of Stillness. He didn't fear it now. It was a tool. A foundation. He began. He didn't form hand signs. He breathed intention. From his core, he let his chakra flow, the vibrant, orange, life-affirming energy of the Ninetales and the Uzumaki clan. It surged out, meeting the brilliant, structured streams of magic from the Alicorn sisters. The two forces didn't clash, they began to weave, guided by Twilight's frantic, perfect calculations. But it was unstable. The bridge of pure energy flickered, threatening to unravel. The portal in the center of the circle showed only chaotic, swirling colors. Now, Naruto thought. He reached for the quiet place. He didn't draw the silence out, he let it frame the noise. He imposed the absolute, managed stillness as a boundary, a canal wall for the raging river of combined energies. The chaotic swirls in the portal smoothed, the colors aligning into a stable, vertical disk of shimmering light. Within it, images flickered, the gnarled bark of a specific tree, the dappled green-gold light of the forest of death. A connection. A fragile, thrumming thread spun across the void between worlds. But it was only a thread. It needed anchors on both sides. They had the equestrian anchor, the circle, the princesses, the harmony. They needed the Konoha anchor. It's holding! Twilight cried, her voice cracking with strain. But it's passive! We need a reciprocal resonance from your side, Naruto. Something to pull on this end. Naruto's mind raced. What in Konoha would recognize his chakra? The Hokage monument? The academy? Ichiraku's? Fool, Kurama's voice rumbled, not unkindly. The strongest resonance is not with a place. It is with a person. Someone whose chakra has tangled with yours in battle, in training, in grief. Sasuke, Sakura, Kakashi-sensei, Jiraiya, Tsunade. But they didn't know he was here. They couldn't actively help. Unless a memory surfaced. Not of a person, but of a technique. A technique born of rivalry, of a promise, of two diametrically opposed powers colliding to create something entirely new. The Rasengan. And the Chidori. He couldn't replicate the Chidori. But he understood its nature, a piercing, focused, lightning-fast thrust. The opposite of the Rasengan swirling, contained chaos. What if he didn't need the person? What if he needed the concept of that clash? The fundamental dissonance that had, in its own way, created a bond as strong as any harmony? Twilight! I'm changing the resonance! He shouted over the hum of energy. I'm not sending a friendly signal. I'm sending a challenge. A call to a fight. What? Twilight shrieked, her scrolls wobbling. That could destabilize everything. Trust me. He focused. He molded his chakra, but not into a Rasengan. He shaped it into the memory of a Rasengan meeting a Chidori. He poured into it all the frustration, the determination, the raw, screaming rivalry he'd shared with Sasuke. It was a burst of pure, discordant, uniquely Naruto and Sasuke energy, shot down the thrumming bridge like a lightning bolt. In the Forest of Death, Konoha, days after Naruto's disappearance. Team 7, plus Team Guy, were on yet another fruitless grid search pattern. The mood was bleak. Sasuke Uchiha moved with a cold, detached efficiency, his Sharingan passively scanning the same familiar, useless terrain. His anger at Naruto's disappearance had frozen into a hard, silent knot in his chest. Suddenly, the air before him ripped. A tiny, unstable vortex of orange and blue energy, crackling with familiar, infuriating chakra, spat into existence for a fraction of a second. It didn't attack. It pulsed. It was a shout in a language only he and one other idiot would understand. A gauntlet thrown from beyond the world. Sasuke's Sharingan spun wildly. He didn't think. His body reacted. Chidori sparked to life in his hand, a shriek of lightning answering the unspoken challenge from the void. He thrust it forward. In Canterlot, the portal flared blindingly white. The thread became a cable. The connection snapped into solidity with a sound like a universe clearing its throat. The image in the portal stabilized, no longer a fuzzy view of a forest, but a clear window. On the other side, framed by the vortex of his own Chidori, was the stunned, pale face of Uchiha Sasuke, surrounded by the equally shocked faces of Sakura, Kakashi, Rock Lee, and others. Silence. For a heartbeat, two worlds stared at each other. Then, from the Konoha side, Sakura's voice, trembling with hope and disbelief. Naruto! And from the Canterlot balcony, Pinkie Pie's voice, bursting with glee. Oh my gosh, it worked, and there's more of them, and they look so serious we should throw a meeting new species from another dimension party immediately. The bridge was open. The door was built. Not with a whisper, but with a scream of rivalry that transcended dimensions. Naruto, standing in the circle of power, grinned his trademark, world-breaking grin at the image of his old team. Hey guys. Miss me? The dam broke. Questions erupted from both sides, a chaotic babble overlapping through the portal. Where are you? What are those creatures? Is that a pony with a rainbow mane? Naruto, your chakra feels weird. Is that a dragon? A tiny dragon. Princess Celestia, with regal grace but undeniable excitement, stepped forward, her voice carrying through the portal with calm authority. Greetings, inhabitants of the world known as Konoha. I am Princess Celestia, co-ruler of Equestria. It seems our lost friend has been quite busy. We have much to discuss. Would you care to step through? On the other side, Kakashi Hatake, his one visible eye crinkling into a smile, gave a slow, deliberate shrug. Well, this is a first. Regulations don't exactly cover interdimensional diplomacy. He looked at his stunned genin, at the eager, colorful faces of ponies peering through from a castle made of candy-colored light. But I suppose it's a chance for a unique cultural exchange. And to retrieve our wayward ninja. He took a step towards the portal. Sasuke, his Chidori sputtering out, stared at Naruto. He saw the same idiot grin, but also a new depth in his eyes, a calmness that hadn't been there before. And he saw, arrayed behind him, beings of pure magic and friendship who had apparently fought a war alongside him. Something inside Sasuke, something cold and lonely, twinged with a feeling he couldn't name. Annoyance? Jealousy? Curiosity? He sheathed his sword. TCH. Only you, Dobe. He muttered, but he followed Kakashi. One by one, the shinobi of Konoha, led by a bemused copy ninja and a reluctantly intrigued last Uchiha, stepped through the shimmering disk of light. They emerged into the observatory, blinking in the pastel-hued magical light, their ninja instincts on high alert in a world that smelled of cupcakes and powerful, benign magic. Naruto stood before them, not as a lost comrade, but as an ambassador between two realities. The adventure was over. A new one, far bigger, stranger, and more hilarious, had just begun. Chapter 15: Cultural Shock and Awe. The initial moments in the Canterlot Observatory were a masterclass in mutual, speechless stupefaction. The shinobi of Konoha stood in a tight, defensive formation, their bodies coiled with instincts honed in a world of hidden knives and sudden death. They were surrounded by pastel-colored ponies, a small purple dragon, and two towering alicorns whose power radiated like a quiet sun and a deep, starry night. The air itself was an assault, thick with sweet, harmless scents and a thrumming harmony that felt like a physical pressure against their chakra senses. On the equestrian side, the ponies stared with wide-eyed fascination at the newcomers. They were so angular. All sharp edges, focused eyes, and strange fabrics. They moved with a predatory stillness that was both thrilling and slightly terrifying. And the energy coming off them. To Twilight's magical senses, it was like standing near a bank of dormant volcanoes, each one a unique blend of fire, earth, lightning, and shadow, all held in tight, lethal check. It was Naruto, standing squarely between the two groups, who broke the silence. He scratched the back of his head, his human gesture feeling both utterly familiar and strangely out of place in the regal hall. Guys, this is every pony. Every pony, these are the guys. He pointed a thumb over his shoulder. The grumpy one with the spiky hair is Sasuke. The pretty one who hits really hard is Sakura. The lazy-looking guy with the mask is Kakashi-sensei, our teacher. The guy in the green spandex is Rock Lee, and his sensei is Mike Guy, and that's Tenten and Niji Hyuga. He then gestured grandly to the ponies. And this is Princess Celestia and Princess Luna. That's Twilight Sparkle, Applejack, Fluttershy, Rarity, Pinkie Pie, and Rainbow Dash. And Spike. They're my friends. The word friends hung in the air, a bridge over the chasm of disbelief. Kakashi was the first to recover his professional composure, though his single visible eye was wider than usual. He gave a shallow, perfectly polite bow. It is an unexpected honor. Thank you for looking after our comrade. He has a talent for finding trouble. Trouble found him, Applejack corrected, her drawl cutting through the tension. And he faced it down fair and square. Saved all our flanks doing it. Sasuke's Sharingan had been active since he stepped through, recording everything. He analyzed the alicorns first, immense, structured power sources, non-hostile posture. The smaller ponies, each a nexus of a specific type of energy, earth, kindness, generosity, etc., weak individually but their auras interlinked in a complex, supportive network. The dragon, minimal threat. His gaze finally landed on Naruto. His chakra signature was the biggest shock. It was still vast, still tinged with the fox's familiar malice, but it was layered. Smoothed over. As if a raging inferno had been covered by a deep, calm lake. And beneath that, a new, unsettling stillness. What happened to you, Dobe? Sasuke asked, his voice flat. Long story, Naruto said, his grin not quite reaching his eyes. Involved a lot of apples, a fashion crisis, and a monster made of quiet. Pinkie Pie couldn't contain herself any longer. She popped up between Kakashi and Guy, causing both seasoned jonin to flinch back a fraction. You guys look so serious. You need to smile. And maybe some cupcakes. Do you have cupcakes in Konoha? Are they ninja cupcakes with hidden shuriken inside? That would be so cool but also dangerous for your tummies. Tenten, the weapons specialist, stared at the bouncing pink pony, then at the observatory's intricate magical machinery. Your technological and thaumaturgical development is clearly advanced, but your combat doctrine seems festive. Rainbow Dash zoomed over, hovering in front of Niji Hyuga. Festive? We can throw down when we need to. I'm the fastest flyer in Equestria. I bet I could outrace any of you. Her wings buzzed with competitive energy. Niji's Byakugan veins bulged as he activated his dojutsu, analyzing her wing structure and the flow of magical energy that granted her flight. Fascinating, he murmured, his cold demeanor cracking slightly with scientific interest. The lift isn't purely aerodynamics. There's a localized manipulation of air pressure and gravitational fields. Princess Celestia, with a patience born of millennia, cleared her throat. The sound was gentle but carried the weight of a gently struck gong, silencing the burgeoning chaos. Welcome, guests of Konoha. This is a historic moment for both our worlds. I propose we adjourn to a more suitable location where we may speak at length. There is much to explain, and I suspect even more to learn. She led the way, a solar flare of serenity moving through the castle halls. The shinobi followed, their training making them note every exit, every potential ambush point, every strangely cheerful tapestry. The ponies flanked them, a living rainbow of curiosity. The more suitable location, was a grand reception hall with a long table laden not with state documents, but with an absurd, glorious feast. There were platters of hay fries, daisy sandwiches, crystal berry salads, and towers of cupcakes. And at Naruto's request, a large, steaming pot of the castle's best attempt at ramen. The cultural clash continued at the table. Rock Lee, upon being offered a daisy sandwich, took a hearty bite, chewed thoughtfully, and then burst into tears. The flavor of youthful vegetation is so pure. It burns with the fires of springtime. Fluttershy, sitting next to him, let out a tiny eep and sank lower in her seat. Sakura, trying to be diplomatic, nibbled on a crystal berry. Her eyes widened. The medicinal properties in this are incredible. The cellular regenerative potential. Twilight lit up. Oh yes! Crystal berries grow in geodes infused with harmonic magic. Their enzymatic structure is a subject of my 14th dissertation. Did you know they can realign minor magical imbalances in earth ponies? Sakura and Twilight immediately fell into a rapid, technical conversation that left everyone else bewildered. Rarity was examining Kakashi's flak jacket and headband with a critical eye. The stitching is durable, I'll grant you, darling, but the aesthetic is so martial. All function, no flair. I could do wonders with this silhouette. Perhaps some accent stitching? A dramatic cloak? Kakashi, who had buried his nose in a copy of Makeout Paradise he'd somehow produced, merely turned a page. I'll consider it. The heart of the interaction, however, was between the two rivals. Sasuke had taken a seat as far from the pastel insanity as possible, picking at a plate of food with disdain. Naruto plopped down across from him, a massive bowl of almost ramen in front of him. So, Naruto said around a mouthful of noodles. What's new in Konoha? Pain tried to destroy it again? Anybody get promoted? Sasuke glared. You vanished for months. You come back through a magic portal with ponies. And you ask about promotions. He leaned forward, his voice low. What is that inside you, Naruto? It's not just the fox. There's something else. Something empty. Naruto's chewing slowed. He swallowed. The casual atmosphere around them seemed to dim. I told you. A monster made of quiet. It wanted to eat me, and use my chakra to unmake this place. I couldn't beat it. So I let it in. I made a room for it. Next to the grumpy fur ball. Sasuke's Sharingan spun, analyzing the truth in the statement. He saw no lie, only a staggering, incomprehensible reality. You contained a conceptual entity. Inside your own soul. Had to. No other way. Naruto shrugged, but the movement was heavier than it should have been. A flicker of something, not respect, perhaps a kind of horrified recognition, passed through Sasuke's eyes. He understood carrying impossible burdens. He understood the corrosion they caused. But this was different. Naruto hadn't been corrupted. He'd been expanded. You're an idiot, Sasuke said finally, looking away. It will consume you from the inside. Nah, Naruto said, digging back into his ramen with renewed vigor. I've got a pretty good property manager now. And the neighbors. He gestured with his chopsticks at the chattering ponies. Keep the noise down. Before Sasuke could retort, a commotion erupted at the end of the table. Pinkie Pie, in an attempt to show Might Guy the Ponyville party cannon salute, had accidentally triggered a small, glittery confetti explosion that coated the esteemed Jonin in sparkles. Guy, instead of being angry, struck a dynamic pose, his tears sparkling as they cut through the glitter. The brilliance of youthful celebration shines upon me. I feel my springtime of life blooming anew. Pinkie stared, then let out a gasp of pure joy. You get it! You totally get it! As laughter, and Guy's booming declarations, filled the hall, Princess Luna, who had been observing quietly from the head of the table, leaned towards her sister. Their world is one of shadows and strife, sister. And yet they have produced a soul capable of holding both chaos and silence. And laughter. Celestia nodded, a gentle smile on her face. And our world, of light and harmony, has been forever changed by him. The bridge is built, Luna. The songs have met. I believe the duet will be spectacularly interesting. The first diplomatic summit between Equestria and the shinobi nations had begun not with treaties and border disputes, but with ramen, glitter, and the unbreakable, noisy, chaotic bonds of a ninja who believed in the power of both the Rasengan and the Welcome Wagon. Chapter 16, The Two-Way Street. The sun hung over the training grounds of Konohagakure, but its light seemed harsher, more focused than the gentle glow of Equestria. The air smelled of dust, pine, and the distant, ever-present hint of forged smoke and ink. It was the smell of home, and it wrapped around Naruto like a worn, familiar blanket. He stood in the center of the field, flanked not by ponies, but by the Hokage, Tsunade, her advisor Shizen, and a council of Jonin including Kakashi, Guy, and a still-stunned Shikamaru, whose strategic mind was visibly overheating trying to process the last 48 hours. Before them, shimmering in the air like a heat haze over a pond, was the stabilized portal. It was no longer in Canterlot, using Naruto's hybrid chakra as a mobile anchor. Twilight Sparkle and a team of her best unicorn mages, plus a very proud Spike, had managed to move the equestrian terminus to the edge of Ponyville, right next to the rebuilt Golden Oaks Library, now Crystal Tree Castle. The Konoha terminus was here, in a newly secured and heavily warded compound. Through the portal, the view was a jarring slice of another world: the candy-colored roofs of Ponyville, the sparkling Crystal Castle, and a crowd of curious, wary ponies led by the 6 bearers and the 2 princesses, who were visiting for the inaugural crossing. Report, Tsunade said, her voice brusque but her eyes betraying a profound, grandmotherly relief at seeing Naruto alive and different. Naruto took a deep breath. This was his mission debrief, but also the first true act of interdimensional diplomacy. Hokage-sama. The world on the other side is called Equestria. It is ruled by immortal alicorns, beings of immense solar and lunar magic. The dominant species are ponies with 3 subtypes: earth ponies, connected to the land, Pegasi, who control weather and flight, and unicorns, who wield telekinetic and transformative magic. Their society is built on a fundamental principle called the magic of friendship, which is a tangible, harmonic force. Shikamaru pinched the bridge of his nose. Troublesome. A civilization where emotional cohesion is a quantifiable power source. Their military doctrine? Largely non-existent in a formal sense. Naruto continued. But they are formidable defenders. Their power scales with unity and positive emotion. Negative emotions and discord attract predatory entities from wild zones, like the one that attacked me, a void entity called the Quiet One. He paused, the memory of the cold stillness a fresh ache. I was able to contain it, using a fusion of my chakra, their harmonic magic, and, well, Fuinjutsu. It's sealed within me now. Part of the new stability. A ripple of shock went through the seasoned shinobi. Containing the Ninetales was one thing. Containing a void entity was an abstract terror they could scarcely grasp. The leadership. Tsunade pressed, gesturing to the regal figures visible through the portal. Are they a threat? Princess Celestia and Princess Luna have ruled for over 1,000 years in peace. They see this connection as a chance for growth, not conquest. Their values are harmony, understanding, and protecting life. They're really strong. Like, maybe stronger than pain. But they'd rather bake you a cake than fight you. He grinned. The cake is really good. Kakashi's eye crinkled. So, a hyper-powered, benign civilization of pastel equines who weaponize happiness. And there are allies because you made friends with them. Basically. Tsunade exchanged a long look with the council. The strategic implications were staggering. A safe, secure ally in another dimension? A potential refuge? A source of completely unknown magical knowledge and resources? The risks were equally huge: cultural contamination, unknown magical diseases, the potential for this harmonic magic to destabilize chakra-based techniques. We proceed with caution, Tsunade declared. But we proceed. Naruto, you are hereby appointed Konoha's first interdimensional ambassador. Your team, Kakashi, Sakura, Sasuke, will serve as your security and diplomatic detail. A select group of researchers from the Intelligence Division and the Konoha Hospital will be assembled to study safe exchange. We start small. Limited visits. Controlled information sharing. At that moment, from the equestrian side of the portal, a pink blur shot forward. Wait for me, gotta be the first official opinion Konoha. Pinkie Pie, unable to contain her historic party sense a second longer, barreled through the portal. She landed in a skid on the dusty training ground, sending up a small plume of dirt. She shook herself off, looked around at the grim-faced, armed shinobi, the austere buildings, the serious atmosphere, and took a deep sniff of the Konoha air. Her eyes widened. Then her mane, which had been its usual fluffy cloud, did something strange. It didn't deflate. It sharpened. The curls became more defined, slightly sleeker. Her posture shifted from bouncy to poised. Whoa, she said, her voice a notch lower, filled with awe. This place has a vibe. It's all tension and secrets and really cool hidden shadows. I love it. She immediately began rummaging in her own fluff, pulling out a notepad and a quill. Okay, notes for the Welcome to Konoha Party. Theme, Ninja Night Stealthy Surprise. Colors, charcoal, forest green, and splash of blood red. Snacks, mystery meat buns. Invisible punch. Cake that looks like a shuriken. This is gonna be awesome. The shinobi stared, nonplussed. This was the weaponized happiness they'd been briefed on. Then, from the portal, Princess Celestia stepped through. Her entrance was the opposite of Pinkie's. She moved with a serene, impossible grace, her hooves not seeming to touch the dirt. Her presence immediately altered the atmosphere. The harsh sunlight seemed to soften, the air grew still and warm. She bowed her head regally to Tsunade. Hokage Tsunade. On behalf of Equestria, I thank you for your openness. We come in peace, and with great curiosity. Her horn glowed softly, and a scroll case adorned with a sun emblem floated towards Tsunade. A gift. Treatises on basic harmonic magic theory, equestrian history, and non-aggression pact proposals for your perusal. Tsunade, impressed by the demeanor, accepted the scroll. You are welcome in Konoha, Princess. We will review these with great interest. Then, the moment everyone had been waiting for. A cyan streak shot through the portal, pulling up into a hovering stop. Rainbow Dash grinned down at the shinobi. So this is the famous hidden leaf? Looks kinda leafy. Her eyes locked on Rock Lee, who was vibrating with excitement. You! Green guy! You said you were fast. Race me! First one to that big rock face and back. Before anyone could stop them, a sonic boom cracked across the training grounds as Rainbow shot towards the Hokage monument. Lee, with a cry of "Youth!" was a green blur right behind her, his chakra-flared speed leaving a trench in the dirt. From the portal, Applejack trotted through, followed by a hesitant Fluttershy, a meticulously observant Rarity, and an ecstatically scribbling Twilight Sparkle. The equestrian delegation had officially arrived. Naruto watched as his two worlds collided. He saw Shikamaru trying to explain tactical formations to Twilight, who was asking about the chakra cost efficiency of shadow manipulation versus telekinesis. He saw Rarity inspecting Tsunade's gambling outfit with a professional, appraising eye, suggesting a more dramatic décolletage. He saw Fluttershy, after initial terror, being approached by a Niken from the Inuzuka clan, and within moments she had the ferocious battle dog rolling over for belly rubs. And he saw Sasuke, standing apart as always, watching the chaos with detached scorn. But his Sharingan was recording everything, analyzing the magic, the social structures, the weaknesses. He wasn't seeing friends, he was seeing data. Potential. Power. Naruto walked over to him. Not what you expected, is it? Sasuke didn't look at him. It's a strategic marvel. And a security nightmare. Their magic is potent but predictable. Their society is soft. They could be manipulated, or destroyed, by any competent enemy from our world. They're not soft, Naruto said, his voice firm. They're different. They fight for what they love in a different way. And they saved me. Not by being strong like a shinobi, but by being strong like them. That's worth protecting too. Sasuke finally glanced at him, a flicker of that old, complex rivalry in his eyes. Sentiment. That's always been your weakness, dope. And it's always been my strength, team. Naruto shot back, his grin returning, fierce and true. It's what built this bridge. And it's gonna change both our worlds. Believe it. As if to punctuate his point, a massive kaboom echoed from the direction of the monument, followed by a cloud of dust and the sound of two voices, one raspy and competitive, one yelling about youth, arguing over a photo finish. The bridge was open. The two-way street was bustling with its first chaotic, hilarious, and profoundly hopeful traffic. Uzumaki Naruto's adventure was over. But the story of the nine-tailed pony, the bridge builder, the harmonizer of worlds, was just beginning.